Chapter 380. Other than Yang Chonggue, he was the only one in the Yang family who knew these secrets. Yang Yi didn't show any signs of abnormality. His life in his hometown was still the same. He and Yang Chonggue were still living the lives of ordinary people. However, there was still a slight change. In the next few days before the spring festival, Yang Yi and Yang Qing drove to the county town a few times. The house was built not long ago, and it was too simple inside. Since the two brothers were there, and it was convenient to have a car, they went to the county town to buy some furniture and appliances to decorate the house. Needless to say, the TV, fridge, air conditioner and so on. Yang Yi even got someone to set up a telephone line in the house. There was basically no signal in this place. Usually, they had to go to the house next door to make a call. It was very inconvenient. In addition to the basic appliances and furniture, Yang Yi also bought an electric pump and a large solar water heater. The electric pump was placed in the well. When it was turned on, the water could be directly pumped up, saving manpower. The water could also be pumped up to the solar water heater on the roof. With these, it would be much more convenient to use water at home. Moreover, she wouldn't have to cook herself in a pot. This big movement naturally attracted the attention of many villagers in Wadayaku village. Every day, there would be people looking for excuses to see the new appliances in the Yang family's house. In private, there were many envious gazes and discussions. Ague, you don't have any farming skills, but you have two good sons with you. You went from being poor to being out of poverty a few years ago, and now you are the richest person in our village. The village chief, Dong Qi, also came. Seeing the changes in the Yang family, he sighed meaningfully to Yang Chonggue. Dong Qi was Dong Yuer's clansman. His seniority was the same as Dong Yuer's, but his age was similar to Yang Chonggue's. However, this time he didn't come to reminisce. To get rich, one must first build roads. This saying was true. Although there was a road in town that led to Wadayaku village, it was built a few years ago. It could take tractors, but it couldn't take trucks. It would affect the sales of the village's crops and mountain products. The village had long planned to build a road, but the villagers had raised funds, but it was not enough to build a road that could carry large trucks. Dong Qi came over because of this matter. He wanted to ask Yang Yi for alms. Dong Qi beat around the bush for a long time before he finally got to the point. However, while he found it difficult to talk about it, Yang Yi was willing to donate generously. After the conversation with his father that night, Yang Yi already had plans to help the village. After some discussion, Yang Yi offered 3 million yuan. Together with the money raised by the village and the subsidies from the state, it was enough to expand and strengthen the foundation of the original road, and build a new road. There should still be a lot of money left. Yang Yi suggested to Dong Qi that the rest of the money be used to fix the mud roads in front of every house in the village. They would do their best to pave the roads with cement. In the future, when Yang Yi drove back, he didn't have to be careful. He drove like a tortoise because he was afraid that the car would be bumped into a ditch. Of course, this money had to be supervised. Since Yang Chonggue had nothing to do and was full of righteousness, he naturally had to shoulder this responsibility. These miscellaneous matters didn't need to be discussed. After donating the money, Yang Yi received the support of many villagers. Most of the villagers were simple and honest. Although the Yang Yi was ahead of them and made some jealous, Yang Yi didn't forget his fellow villagers. They all remembered this kindness in their hearts. After the news spread, the Yang family's house was crowded again. However, this time, they didn't come to look at the Yang family's house and big appliances. The simple and honest villagers gave Yang Yi a lot of mountain products, and some game they hunted in the mountains. These things weren't worth much because they couldn't be sold. However, the thought behind the gift was more important. They sent them to Yang Yi's wife and daughter to try. This could be considered as repaying Yang Yi's kindness. 2 days before the spring festival, Yang Qing's girlfriend came to visit. Yang Qing's girlfriend was called Zheng Shuyi. She was from Zheng village in the same town. Zheng village's geographical location was much better than Wadayaku village. Not only was it close to the town, but it was also close to the county. Therefore, Zheng village was obviously much richer. Because the roads were smooth, most of the people in Zheng village lived in buildings. The wealthiest families even drove cars. Logically speaking, Such a rich village wouldn't marry their daughter to Wadayaku village. However, the Yang family suddenly became rich and could afford to hire a good matchmaker. She exaggerated the relationship between Yang Qing and the Yang family to the skies. Zheng Shuyi's mother was willing to let the two young people meet and try. Originally, it was just a test. Zheng Shuyi's mother didn't think of marrying her daughter to such a remote Wadayaku village. However, who knew that Yang Qing was simple and honest and Zheng Shuyi was gentle and virtuous? When the two met, they liked each other very well. Zheng Shuyi's parents were quite satisfied with Yang Qing, who was diligent in his work and didn't have a glib tongue. They had once wanted Yang Qing to come to the Zheng family village and become a live-in son-in-law. Of course, this was impossible. Fortunately, the Yang family's wealth gradually increased with Yang Yi's help. They could afford the betrothal gifts that the Zheng family wanted. In addition, the parents of both parties met a few times and dispelled the Zheng family's doubts and worries about the Yang family. Only then did Zheng Shuyi's parents agree to marry their daughter. Of course, Yang Qing and Zheng Shuyi got along very well. After confirming that Zheng Shuyi was going to visit, he even took the initiative to ask his brother to drive him to pick up Zheng Shuyi. Zheng Shuyi wasn't a beauty. Her appearance was clear. She was neither tall nor short, neither fat nor thin. She was still a good-looking girl. She had a high school education. She was better than Yang Qing and Yang Yi. She was well-educated and not delicate. According to Yang Qing, she usually helped out at home. After coming to visit, she even rushed to help in the kitchen. Murphy, who had just learned how to pick vegetables, also lost her job. Hearing that Uncle Qing Zi's aunt was coming, she was curious. She just came back from a stroll with her grandfather. She pulled her father's hand and couldn't wait to go to the kitchen to see the real person. Is she Uncle Qing Zi's aunt? When the little girl saw an unfamiliar woman, she became a little shy. She went behind her father and pulled on his clothes as she asked softly, "Yes, but you have to call her aunt directly. You can't call her Uncle Qing Zi's aunt. It has two different meanings." Yang Yi smiled as he corrected her. Zheng Shuyi also saw Shi and even waved her hand to greet her. But when she heard the conversation between Yang Yi and Shi, she was a little shy. After all, they weren't married yet. "Why are you all here?" Yang Qing was worried and came over to take a look. Being a taciturn person, he couldn't help but say to Yang Yi and Yang Huan, who was snickering at the side, all right, just take a look. Don't scare Shuyi." Yang Qing's boyfriend power was at its peak, and he began to chase them away. Yang Yi could only hold his daughter's hand and walk out. However, Cece's innocent voice was still heard. The little girl was now familiar with Yang Qing. She couldn't wait to express her opinion to Yang Qing. "Uncle Qing Zi, Aunt Qing is also super beautiful." Yang Qing didn't know what to say. He scratched his head and smiled innocently. "Really?" "Yes. I like Aunt Qing's hair. Papa, can you braid the same hair for me?" The little girl's thoughts were jumping, but her words still made Zheng Shuyi happy. She couldn't help but touch the braids she braided for brother Qing Zi for a long time today. "Sister-in-law, your daughter's mouth is so sweet," Zheng Shuyi said to Murphy enviously. "If only I could have such a lovely daughter like you." "Yes, after you and Qing Zi get married, you will have your own baby soon. It must be very cute." Mo Fei and Zheng Shuyi, who were also unmarried, had already started chatting with each other. In fact, she was more envious of Zheng Shuyi, because Zheng Shuyi and Yang Qing's marriage had already been set in May of this year. And it seemed that she didn't know when her wedding with Yang Yi would take place. Although she had made an appointment with Yang Yi that they would get the marriage certificate when they returned to Jiang City during the Spring Festival, it was indeed just a certificate. For a woman, the most important thing was the wedding. While they were chatting, Dong Yue, who didn't let the man cook and cooked by herself, frowned. Chapter 381. In fact, Zheng Shuyi was just expressing her feelings when she saw Shi. She didn't really want to have a daughter. However, Dong Yue frowned when she heard these words. The speaker has no intention, but the listener has a heart. Fortunately, Dong Yue wasn't an ordinary mother-in-law. She could control Yang Chonggui. Moreover, she had lived with Yang Chonggui for decades. She wasn't as stubborn as the other mothers-in-law in the village. She pondered for a while and said to Zheng Shuyi with a smile, Shuyi actually, it's not only the daughter who is so cute. The son is not bad too. Look at Taizi and Qingzi. They were so smart when they were young. Now they are sensible and filial. After all, Zheng Shuyi grew up in a similar environment. She immediately understood what Dong Yuer meant. She hurriedly said, Aunt Dong, I understand. We want to have a son. It's not that we have to have a son. A few months ago, the county sent people to spread the news that it's the same whether it's a son or a daughter. I'm not that unreasonable. Dong Yuer looked at Zheng Shuyi and smiled. However, she said, if we really have a daughter, we'll be happy too. Look at your Uncle Yang. Isn't he always around little Yang Shi? It's just that there's only one branch left in the Yang family. Your Uncle Yang also hopes to have more men. It's more popular. Dong Yuer looked at Murphy again. Murphy, I'm not rushing you. It's just that you and Taizi haven't prepared to have another child after having your first one for so long. Zheng Shuyi's arrival made the Yang family more cheerful and lively after dinner. Yang Yi and Murphy didn't talk much. Yang Qing was a taciturn person. He answered every question that was asked. Usually he didn't have much of a presence. A few days ago, it was Yang Huan and Shishi who livened up the atmosphere. After Zheng Shuyi came, there were more topics to talk about. After she passed the period of restraint, her cheerful personality allowed her to integrate into the big family quickly. She, who was good at talking, also helped Yang Qing to say some things. For example, she took the initiative to pour tea for Yang Yi. Brother Taizi, thank you for your support. Qingzi told me that if you didn't help to pay for the betrothal gift, Qingzi and I wouldn't know what to do. Yang Yi smiled and took the tea. He looked at Zheng Shuyi and Qing holding hands and said, you don't have to thank me. You and Qing were fated to be together. Because you hit on each other. That's why you can be together. Even if I don't have the money, Qing will try his best to earn money to marry you. I'm just doing what an elder brother can do. I want him to suffer less so that your relationship won't be so bumpy. Don't you think I'm right? Yang Qing and Zheng Shuyi fiercely nodded. Zheng Shuyi gratefully said, even so, I still have to thank you. As night fell, Zheng Shuyi was sent back home. Yang Yi drove Yang Qing back. After he got out of the car, he patted Yang Qing's shoulder and said with a smile, find some time to go to town, learn how to drive, and get your license. When you get married, I'll give you a car as a gift. Really? No, it's too expensive. Brother, you've already paid for the betrothal gift. How can I accept such an expensive gift? After all, Yang Qing was also a man. He had a natural love for cars. But soon he refused. I didn't buy you a car just for you. Yang Yi knew Yang Qing's character. He had already prepared an excuse. I bought it for you to show filial piety to your parents. Sometimes, you can drive them wherever they want to go. Besides, if Shuyi wants to go back to her parents' house, she doesn't have a car. How can you let her go back by tractor? Yang Qing couldn't refuse this reason. He could only nod silently. Yang Yi went back upstairs. Shishi, who had just finished bathing, was sitting cross-legged on the quilt, watching the TV intently. However, the TV wasn't good. She could only get the TV from Peijun City and a few county stations. There were no cartoons. She couldn't understand the content on the TV. She turned her head and saw that her father had come back. She immediately got up from the bed and stepped on the quilt. She pouted and said, Papa, I don't want to watch this TV. Can you help me find that TV with De Xiong and Air Xiong? There's no De Xiong and Air Xiong here. There are only these few TV channels. Yang Yi smiled bitterly and shook his head. There were a lot of advertisements on the local TV channels. The quality of the TV dramas was poor. Yang Yi and Murphy didn't like to watch them, let alone Shishi. But there was no other way. The TV operators hadn't been able to expand their business to Wadayaka village. They could only hope that after the road was repaired, there would be a turnaround. However, after hearing her father's words, Shishi felt a little wronged. She pulled her father's clothes and said, Papa, I want to go home. Go home? Why? Yang Yi asked in surprise. Didn't the little girl have a lot of fun a few days ago? It's not fun here. There's no De Xiong and Air Xiong to watch. Then Xiao Guai and the others aren't here. I also miss Xi and Air, Chi Chi and the others. She became sadder as she spoke. Young Yi quickly sat down and hugged her. How can it not be fun? Didn't you have a lot of fun with Grandpa this morning? But Grandpa went to sleep at night. Shi's eyes turned red. She pulled her father's clothes and said sadly, and it was dark outside. It was very scary. Why is she crying? Murphy had just come out of the shower. She was drying her hair when she heard Shi's cry. She looked at Yang Yi in confusion. Mom, I want to go home. The little girl sobbed. She's too bored at night. Yang Yi said with a wry smile. Murphy sat beside Yang Yi, reached out her hand and touched her daughter's nose. She said softly, we will go home, but not now. We have to wait until after the spring festival. By the way, didn't you say that you would go with Grandpa to watch the dogs give birth tomorrow? If you go back, how can you watch the dogs give birth? She was stunned. She didn't seem to think about this problem. Now that she thought about it, she became spirited again. Although her eyes were still red, she pouted and said, Then I don't want to go back first. I want to watch the dogs give birth. After coaxing his daughter, Yang Yi breathed a sigh of relief. He began to rack his brains to tell Shishi a story. Finally, her tears turned into laughter. Then she fell asleep peacefully. Tomorrow morning, the little girl would certainly not think of going back, because there were still many unknown places in the village waiting for her to explore. However, Murphy had something on her mind. When Shishi fell asleep, she hugged Yang Yi's arm and told him, Yang Yi, what do you think if Erwa gives birth to a daughter in the future? Give birth to a daughter? Yang Yi beamed with joy. That's a good thing. I have another daughter, and then Shishi will also have a sister. Hey, I didn't mean that. It's because of Mom, she wants a grandson, and so does Dad. Murphy told Yang Yi about what Dong Yue had said to her and Zheng Shuyi in the morning. She said with some worry, Actually, I also want a son. One son and one daughter. How happy. But I'm afraid that if I give birth to another daughter, Dad and Mom will be disappointed. You big fool, if you give birth to another daughter, Dad and Mom won't blame you. Because don't you have my brother and his wife? Yang Yi said with a smile. Moreover, you don't even know if it will be a daughter. Maybe it will be a son. Isn't that a happy ending for everyone? But what if it must be a daughter? Murphy asked worriedly. If it's a daughter, then I tell you, I'll be 1,000,000% happy. Then Dad and Mom definitely won't be disappointed because of this. Look at Dad, doesn't he dote on Cece so much now? Girls are better, well-behaved and cute. Yang Yi patted his chest and said, I know you're comforting me. Murphy actually felt a lot more at ease after hearing Yang Yi's words, although she still blamed him. By the way, we can't just talk about it without doing anything. Yang Yi moved closer to Murphy's ear. If you want to have a second baby, you have to practice more, and be good at it. Damn, Shishi is still here. Murphy's face turned red. Next door. Didn't you see that 2 days ago, in addition to the furniture and home appliances, I also bought the bedding? Moreover, I washed it clean and dried it for 2 days. It smells good. Yang Yi laughed. No wonder, forgive you for your premeditated plan. Murphy bashfully pinched Yang Yi's waist. Her ears were dyed pink. As if he heard the starting gun, Yang Yi turned over and got out of bed with his hairy legs bare. He was not afraid of the cold. He wrapped Murphy, who was wearing warm pajamas, with his coat and carried her up. Murphy was tall and not light, but Yang Yi was strong, so it was easy for him to carry her. Mo Fei was so scared by his anxious look that she let out a scream. However, seeing Yang Yi rummaging in the luggage next to her, Murphy hooked Yang Yi's neck with one hand and pulled Yang Yi's hand with the other. She blushed and said, No need. Yang Yi misunderstood. He smiled and said, half comforting and half teasing, Don't worry, I know it's not easy to buy this large-size condom, so I brought a few boxes back. It's enough. Murphy was so shy that she buried her head in Yang Yi's arms and said in a muffled voice, Didn't you say it's a practice? How can I practice wearing it? Yang Yi was overjoyed. Chapter 382. De Po was the one who told Shishi that a dog was about to give birth. Their De Huang had been pregnant for 2 months. Moreover, it had been a little restless these days, running around or circling around its nest. It seemed that it would give birth to a baby in the next 2 days. However, to Xixi disappointment, when she and her grandfather went to visit Diapers the next day, De Huang had not given birth yet. Li Shupo lied about the military intelligence. De Huang would give birth on the first day of the Spring Festival. However, because it was the first day of the Spring Festival, Yang Yi and Yang Chonggui did not tell Xixi that it was not appropriate to disturb people who were not relatives today. Although Xixi woke up early in the morning and missed the puppy for a while, the lively atmosphere of the Spring Festival diluted her longing. The crackling sound of firecrackers rose and fell in the village. In Wadayaka village, the opening of the door to set off firecrackers was called the Door God. The Yang family also set off firecrackers, and this year, Lunar New Year, the first one was lit by Yang Yi. Xixi was actually a little afraid of firecrackers. A few days ago, when she saw the crackling sound of firecrackers exploding, she would tremble. However, the more afraid she was, the more she wanted to see it. She shrank in her mother's arms early in the morning. While nervous, she stared at it intently. Mo Fei's hands were pulled up by her, and covered her ears with them. Seeing her father walking to the long firecrackers with incense, the little girl became anxious. She could not help but cry. "Papa, be careful." Before Yang Yi lit the firecrackers, she shouted in panic, "Papa, run, it's going to explode." She was so nervous that her little face tightened. However, her father was very calm. Yang Yi calmly lit the fuse, then turned his head and slowly walked to Xixi. The firecrackers behind him crackled for a while, and began to explode one by one. A real man would never look back to see an explosion. The firecrackers behind him lit up one by one and exploded in the air, rolling up thick smoke. The red firecracker paper fluttered like butterflies, circling and falling to the ground. However, his calmness made Xixi extremely anxious. She snuggled into her mother's arms and stomped her little feet, wishing that she could help her father run. He is Daddy cool? Yang Yi finally came back alive. He made a shooting gesture at his daughter, thinking that he looked very cool. However, Xixi pouted and said unhappily, "I don't want to talk to you anymore. Papa, you're naughty and disobedient." "Hey, why are you being disobedient?" Yang Yi smiled and reached out to scratch his daughter's little nose. There was still a red mark on his finger, and Xixi's nose was also stained with a little red. "I told you to run, or you'll be blown up," Xixi complained. "No, I know when it will explode, so I can control the distance." Yang Yi smiled gently. But it's very scary. I don't like it, I don't like it." The little girl shook her little head. Xixi was actually in a good mood that day. What she was happiest about was receiving red packets. Early in the morning, the little girl couldn't wait to go to each person, wishing them good luck, and then looked at them eagerly as they waited for the red packets. Xixi received a big red packet from her father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, and Uncle Qingzi. She happily put it in her pocket. Her mother said that she could take it first and give it to her mother for safekeeping at night. However, Xixi encountered difficulties with her little aunt. "What? You want a red packet from me? I'm not old enough to ask for red packets." Yang Huan pouted and complained to Xixi. Xixi didn't understand. She blinked her big eyes innocently and looked at Yang Huan. In her opinion, it was okay to ask for red packets from adults. Yang Huan was defeated by her innocent and hopeful eyes. She reluctantly took out the red packet that she had asked for from Yang Yi in the morning, and handed it over. All right, here you go." "Hee hee, little aunt, you're so nice." Xixi smiled. Her mouth was very sweet, as if it was smeared with honey. After receiving the red packet, she carefully opened the pocket of her down jacket and put it in. Then, she carefully buttoned the pocket, as if she was afraid that she would lose it. "There are so many red packets. Give me some." Yang Huan glanced at it and said enviously, "No." The little girl giggled and ran away with her long legs. The little girl was very busy. She still had to visit relatives with her father, grandfather, and grandmother, and then continue to receive red packets. The next day, Yang Chonggui took Xixi to Diapers' house to see the puppy. Yang Yi was also interested in the puppy, so he went with them. De Huang was a Chinese rural dog, also known as a native dog. However, the breed of Diapers de Huang was very pure. It had brownish-yellow fur on its back and white fur on its abdomen. The fur was medium long and fine, a bit like a Shiba Inu. However, its mouth was sharper and its limbs were more slender and strong. Big Yellow, who was still taking care of its baby in its nest, raised its head vigilantly and bared its sharp canine teeth. The dog that bites doesn't bark, so Big Yellow didn't make a sound. It had the demeanor of a general. Shishi was so frightened that she hurriedly hid behind her father. Big Yellow, this is a friend. Don't scare him. Dipa squatted down and patted Big Yellow's back to comfort him. Big Yellow slowly curbed its ferocious look. It lowered its head and wagged its tail. It has accepted you. Dipa smiled and said to Yang Yi and Shishi. Just watch from here. The bitch is protecting her pups. Yang Chonggui stopped Shishi, who was curious and wanted to get closer to the front. Big Yellow's nest was moved to a warm house because of the delivery of the babies. Although it was a simple nest made of haystacks, Cece's attention was still attracted by the 6 small gray balls of meat lying under Big Yellow's belly. The little girl was a little afraid of the big bitch, so she held her father's hand and didn't let go. However, she couldn't help but be curious and happy. She opened her big eyes and kept looking at the small meatballs. Papa, why aren't they moving? Shishi looked for a while and finally couldn't help but ask. Because they were just born not long ago and are still sleeping sleepily. Yang Yi explained. Moreover, they can't see or hear now. They have to wait until they are bigger before they can be active. At this time, one of the small meatballs moved. Papa, look. Shishi cried out in surprise, her face full of joy. The small meatball arched and squeezed into Big Yellow's belly. It looked around, found a place, and began to drink milk. During the whole process, Shishi opened her eyes wide and watched nervously. This small meatball was so cute. It didn't seem to have any defense at all, which made Cece feel pity and love for it. Teacher Yang, brother Teasy, if this child likes it, why don't we take one home? Dipa scratched his head and smiled. Really? Shishi looked at him in surprise. She looked at her father nervously and asked expectantly. Papa, can we take a puppy home? Of course, our Big Yellow gave birth to 2 litters of puppies, and they were all taken away. If you like it, you can take one home too. It's okay. Dipa said generously. However, Yang Yi shook his head. Not now. Shishi felt as if she had fallen from the clouds to the ground. She felt wronged and asked. Papa, why not? I like puppies. It's not that Papa doesn't want you to raise a dog, but it's not now. Yang Yi explained with a smile. The puppy is still small, and we can't take care of it. It's best to let it stay with its mother for a while, and it's best to take it home after 2 or 3 months. You don't want the puppy to leave its mother, right? But I still like puppies. I like this one. Shishi pouted and pointed at the small meatball that moved just now. Perhaps she felt that this one was more congenial. Then this one is ours. Yang Yi said with a smile. But it's still with its mother for now. When we come in May, we'll take it home. At this time, Yang Yi turned to Li Shupo and said, Dipa, please leave this one for Shishi and help take care of it for a few months. When we come back from Qingzi's wedding in May, we'll take it home. No problem. The conversation between her father and the uncle made Shishi smile happily again. Puppy, you have to wait for me to come back to pick you up. When they parted, Shishi could finally hug the small meatball. She was so happy that she couldn't bear to let go. In the end, she said to the small meatball reluctantly. Although they still had to wait for a few months, they were going to have a puppy. Shishi began to look forward to it. Chapter 383. After staying at home for 2 weeks, Yang Yi and his family embarked on their return journey on the 6th day of the Lunar New Year. The car was filled with mountain goods sent by the villagers. Yang Huan had to stay at home until the end of the Lantern Festival, and then take the train back. Yang Yi and his family returned to Jiang City early, because the holidays were over and Murphy had to go back to work. When they left, Shishi was fine. She only talked about the puppy and said goodbye to her grandparents reluctantly, but she didn't cry and complain about not wanting to go home. But Yang Chonggui was sad. He was the most reluctant. These days he was used to his granddaughter's constant chatter. Now that his granddaughter was going back, The old man's heart felt empty. When he woke up early in the morning, he looked at Yang Yi with a sullen face. Yang Yi couldn't do anything about it. He tried again. Dad, why don't you come to my place and play for a while before coming back? Yang Yi had mentioned this to Yang Chonggui and Dong Yuao before. He wanted to bring them to the city to enjoy life. However, Yang Chonggui and Dong Yuao were not willing. Compared to the city, they preferred the small village where they had lived for decades. Dong Yuao had said before, when you and Murphy have a wedding, or when you have a baby, I will go and take a look. As expected, Yang Chonggui didn't agree. Instead, he glared at him, as if he was the one who kidnapped his granddaughter. They returned to Jiang City safely. A new year was about to begin. Although the students hadn't returned to school yet, Du Yuanlei was still there. In order to finish the production of Fairy Tale as soon as possible, she spent the whole spring festival in the editing room provided by the school. The next day, Yang Yi took Cece and brought some local specialties from his hometown to look for her. He also picked up the 3 kittens that he had taken care of. But when he saw Du Yuanlei, Yang Yi was stunned. He almost didn't recognize her. The girl in front of him with her hair tied up casually and her face pale and haggard was so different from the confident and proud goddess director. Little Du, I didn't give you a deadline, did I? I didn't ask you to edit the film in a hurry. Why? Did you torture yourself like this? Yang Yi couldn't help but scold him. Du Yuanlei shook her head, hesitating to speak. Teacher Yang, the film is done. Why don't you come and take a look? Du Yuanlei took out her laptop and placed it on the table. Speaking of this micro-movie, Du Yuanlei's face revealed a trace of a smile, as if it was her painstaking work. Yang Yi nodded and went to the computer to look. The plot was still a familiar plot, but in Du Yuanlei's hands, it had a different flavor. Compared to the music videos in his previous life, the story of this micro-movie was much fuller, and the pace was also very tight, especially in some of the tear-jerking scenes. The combination of moving and still scenes was very expressive. I want to become a fairy tale. The song that Guizi had recorded before the festival was also edited into the micro-movie. Of course, compared to the music video, the editing and accompaniment were more reasonable. It did not give the feeling of an extended music video. Good shooting, good editing. Yang Yi praised. You did a good job in this film. After school reopens, we'll officially release this film on Weibo. We'll also start a Weibo competition. Believe me, more people will see your work. After Yang Yi finished watching, he raised his head and said to Du Yuanlei, who was bringing Shishi to see the 3 kittens. Of course, they couldn't be called kittens, because the 6 to 7-month-old British Shorthair was not small. It was just that they were a little silly, and their big yellow and black eyes gave people a feeling of being silly and cute. However, when Shishi saw Xiao Guai and the others, she ran over and complained, Papa, Xiao Guai, and Dondo, they became fat. Became fat? Yang Yi was surprised and went over to take a look with Shishi. The 3 grayish-blue little guys were still lying in their warm nest. They lazily raised their eyes to look at the poop picker, and only Dondo meowed as a greeting. They really became fat. Yang Yi touched Dondo. It was fat now, and its fur was smooth. It looked like it had a lot of oil. It was too lazy to move, but its tail gently swayed over and rubbed Yang Yi's arm. Du Yuanlei said with some embarrassment, I'm sorry, Mr. Yang. I didn't have time to let them go out for a walk, and I was afraid that they would get lost, so I kept them in the dormitory. Du Yuanlei lived in Jiangchuan's postgraduate dormitory. It was a newly built building, and it was very new. It was like an apartment, and there were 2 people in one dormitory. Du Yuanlei's roommate moved out to live with her boyfriend, so she lived alone in one room, which was quite spacious. The 3 little guys didn't seem to exercise much, and they also ate a lot. Next to them were the canned small fish that Du Yuanlei bought for them. He didn't know if they had a good appetite. Papa, it's not good to be fat. Look at Xiao Guai. She doesn't want to play with me anymore. Shishi said sadly. Okay, it's okay. When you go back, you can play with them more with the cat teaser, and they will lose weight quickly. They didn't gain much weight. Maybe they don't want to move because it's cold. Yang Yi rubbed his daughter's little head and smiled. The last sentence was said to Du Yuanlei. He packed the 3 little British Shorthair into a cramped cat cage. then took their little nest and prepared to leave with Shi. Mr. Yang, you can take this with you. They can eat it when we go back. Du Yuanlei caught up and handed the remaining dozen canned small fish to Yang Yi in a bag. She looked at the 3 cats a little reluctantly, then shook her head and said to Yang Yi, I don't have any cats here anyway, so it's useless to keep them. Yang Yi took it and said to Du Yuanlei with a smile, You've finished making the micro-movie, so there's no need to make yourself look like neither a human nor a ghost. Rest well for a few days, relax, or go out and have some fun. When you're ready, I'll show you the new script. Mr. Yang, you've already written the script? Du Yuanlei was surprised. From a micro-movie to a real movie. The latter was the real leap that Du Yuanlei wanted to make. Don't get too excited. We'll talk about it when you're ready. Yang Yi waved his hand and smiled. I can't trust you with the script in your current state. After Yang Yi and his daughter left, Du Yuanlei returned to her room. She walked in front of the dressing mirror, looked at her haggard appearance, and sighed faintly. Mr. Yang, do you think that I became like this because I didn't sleep well? Du Yuanlei was talking to herself. Du Yuanlei took out a book from the drawer, and took out a photo that was clipped inside. On the photo was a girl with long hair. She was smiling and hugging the neck of a boy in front of her. She was jumping on his back. Chapter 384. Du Yuanlei had been in a relationship during her undergraduate studies. Her boyfriend was her high school classmate. At that time, she was still very innocent. She thought that loving someone was the end of the story. Love at that time was indeed beautiful. When she was in her 3rd year of university, Du Yuanlei was busy with the documentary project and had no time for romance. However, when she looked back, she saw her boyfriend holding hands with another woman and walking into a small hotel. It was really a coincidence, but it was also like a bolt from the blue. It made her lose hope in love. This relationship naturally ended when Du Yuanlei broke up with him. Although her ex-boyfriend cried and begged for her forgiveness, Du Yuanlei was still cold. Only she knew that under her cold expression, her heart was bleeding. In order to forget him, Du Yuanlei even cut her hair. From then on, Du Yuanlei had short hair and no makeup. Later, her ex-boyfriend dated a few girls during his 4th year of university, but none of them lasted. When they graduated, he came to Du Yuanlei drunk and told her that he still loved her. However, Du Yuanlei had already been hurt by him and could not forgive him. Ironically, during the spring festival, Du Yuanlei found out from a high school friend that her ex-boyfriend, who had returned to his hometown to become a civil servant, had gotten married during the spring festival. In just half a year, he dated another woman and got her pregnant. He got married in a hurry. When Du Yuanlei heard the news, she felt inexplicably sad again. She thought that she had given up on this jerk and had let go of the past. However, when she heard the news of his marriage, Du Yuanlei was still in a daze for a few days. She did not know why her tears fell, and then she lost her appetite. How could she not be haggard after such a torment? Now Du Yuanlei found the photo again. Looking at her long hair in the photo, it felt like a lifetime had passed. However, Du Yuanlei's eyes suddenly became determined. She took out a pair of scissors and without hesitation, she began to cut the photo into pieces. Piece by piece, they fell like autumn leaves. Aoyang, thank you for giving me good and bad memories. However, I have to look forward. Du Yuanlei looked at the photo fragments on the table and was stunned for a moment. However, she still swept them into the trash can. Goodbye? Du Yuanlei got up and went to the bathroom to wash her face with cold water. She decided to have a good sleep. Like Yang Yi said, she would go out and have fun for a few days. When she recovered, she would start her new movie as soon as possible. Du Yuanlei walked away. The lamp on the table was still on. Under the book with the photo, there was a thick script. However, it wasn't fairy tale. It was Love Alley, that Du Yuanlei had written before the adaptation. Didn't Guizi and Yang Yi ask Du Yuanlei why she had to write Aguang to death? What they did not know was that Aguang and the male lead who pursued Su Shishir were actually 2 beautiful images of Du Yuanlei's ex-boyfriend, Aoyang. The male lead was when Aoyang was pursuing Du Yuanlei, and Aguang was the best memory of Aoyang and Du Yuanlei. Ah Guang died because Du Yuanlei wanted this memory to disappear completely. She did not want him to become the Ah Liang that she hated. As for the male lead, although he was sincere and tried to pursue Su Shirshir, Du Yuanlei knew that this man, who was so good at the courtship stage, would not cherish her after he got her. Therefore, Du Yuanlei would rather Su Shirshir not accept him than let her experience the same thing again. Isn't this brain circuit amazing? This is art. Unfortunately, Du Yuanlei was good at art, but she could not write a good story. It was better for her to focus on being a director. Not to mention Du Yuanlei's self-adjustment. Yang Yi also started to get busy after he returned home. He was preparing for a romantic proposal for Murphy. Of course, Murphy did not know when he planned to propose, but Yang Yi had already put it on the agenda. Both of them had previously discussed that they would wait for Murphy to return from Shanghai after filming Jixin interview in a few days. Since she had not started preparing for the concert arranged by the company, they would go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get their marriage certificate during this short break. Yang Yi planned to propose to Murphy the night before that, which was also the night when Murphy returned from filming. Therefore, before that, Yang Yi had to make all the preparations and think of a romantic proposal for Murphy. However, for the time being, these preparations could only be carried out in his mind. In order not to let Mo Fei notice, in the first few days after he came back, Yang Yi did not buy the necessary materials. He would wait until Mo Fei went to record the show, and then he would take action. On this day, Yang Yi was wiping the bar counter in the coffee shop. The coffee shop on the corner of the street had not been open for 2 weeks. It took Yang Yi a whole day just to clean it up. It was only today that it officially reopened. However, the students had not returned to school yet, so there should not be any customers. Yang Yi wiped the bar and coffee cups as he smiled at his daughter, who was playing with the cat beside him. She did not wear as much as she did in her hometown because Jiangqing was slightly warmer than Pei Prefecture. In addition, spring had quietly revealed its beautiful figure, so the thick down jacket could be hung up. Cici was wearing a long-sleeved sweater. The upper part of the sweater was pure pink, while the lower part of the sweater near her belly, including the sleeves at the same level, was black with white dots. There was also an elegant and cute white cat girl with a black bow in the middle, spanning across the 2 color areas. In the coffee shop, a sweater was enough to keep the girl warm without wearing too much. The little girl also looked playful and cute. Xiao Guai duo and Xiao Hui come with sister. She shook the cat teaser and played with the 3 British shorthair who had gained a lot of weight. Fortunately, they had only gained a lot of weight. In the warm coffee shop, they were still willing to move around. Under the teasing of the cotton ball on the cat teaser, the 3 British shorthair jumped up one after another on the ground, then flipped over and landed on the ground. She blinked her big eyes. She wanted Xiao Guai and the others to lose weight, but she felt that this amount of exercise was not enough. Thus, the little girl stepped on her heels, took off her little sneakers, and climbed onto the sofa seat in the booth. Her feet, which were wearing cartoon socks, stepped on the sofa, making squeaking sounds. Hee Xiao Guai, come up. Xiao Hui duo, come up too. Cici felt that it was very fun to step on them. She laughed happily and waved the cat stick at them while waving the cat teaser. The 3 British shorthair looked at their little master for a while. In the end, Xiao Guai was the most obedient. It jumped up and jumped onto the sofa. After all, from the looks of their bodies, the 3 British shorthair, which were 6 to 7 months old, had fully developed. They were similar to adult cats, so it was easy for them to jump onto the sofa. Seeing that Xiao Guai, who jumped onto the sofa first, was stroked by their little master, Xiao Hui and duo also jumped onto the sofa. Oh, wait a minute, I can't stand anymore. She giggled and quickly stepped back. Stand steadily, hold on to the back of the sofa, don't fall. Yang Yi also thought it was interesting, but he was still a little worried and reminded her. At this time, 2 people walked into the coffee shop. Acquaintances. Chapter 385. Of course, Yang Yi knew the 2 who came in from the door. When they left, they specially came to the coffee shop to bid farewell. However, at this moment, after nearly half a year, the 2 of them were very different. Their clothes were still simple, but they weren't as down and out as before. Their trench coats weren't expensive, and they looked much neater. In terms of spirit and appearance, they weren't as complacent and full of vitality as when they left. Instead, their faces had more vicissitudes of life, and they gave off a faint sense of loneliness. But regardless of anything else, Yang Yi was still very happy to see them. He smiled and took the initiative to greet them. Qianli Chuanshu, Lu Xiaoshu Miao Chuan. TSK, what a rare guest. Long time no see. It was indeed Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan. The two of them shyly smiled at Yang Yi. Lu Xiaoshu also cupped his hands and greeted Yang Yi. The two of them were about to pay for the coffee, but Yang Yi waved his hand and smiled. We haven't seen each other for so long, and you're still doing the same old thing. I'll treat you to coffee, and you sing me a song. Yeah, that I miss her in the winter in the north. Or do you have any new songs? Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan were stunned for a moment. They looked at each other with an awkward expression. What? You don't want to sing? Don't tell me that singing a song now costs more than a cup of coffee? Yang Yi knew that the two of them weren't that kind of people. He was just joking and teasing them. No, it's just that we're not allowed to sing in public. Lu Xiaoshu shook his head with a wry smile. Yang Yi knitted his brows and shook his head. There's only a few of us in this shop, and it's still considered a public place? Your management company is really too much. There are too many rules. Forget it, I'll treat you to coffee. Miao Chuan wanted to say something but hesitated. Lu Xiaoshu gritted his teeth and said, You're right, boss. Anyway, it's not a public place, and there's no one else. What's the big deal about singing a song? But I didn't bring my guitar today, so I'll have to sing for you, boss. Can you play the piano? Yang Yi liked Lu Xiaoshu's straightforwardness. He pointed to the piano and said, You can play that one. I will. Miao Chuan nodded. After he finished speaking, he walked over to the piano. Theodore grand piano? Miao Chuan finally reacted and looked at Yang Yi in surprise. He touched it lovingly. The black body of the piano felt as delicate as milk. Next, Miao Chuan played the piano accompaniment and Lu Xiaoshu sang. Miao Chuan would also sing a few lines. The two of them cooperated well and performed the song, I Miss Her in the Winter in the North for Yang Yi. Although there was only the last bit of coldness left in the winter, Lu Xiaoshu's voice was still as clear as winter. His and Miao Chuan's vicissitudes and helplessness added a touch of sadness to the song. It was so nice that she couldn't help but stop and look over. She stood on the sofa and leaned her little butt against the backrest, listening quietly. Although she didn't understand the meaning of the lyrics, the melody was very beautiful. It was those two uncles. The little girl also recognized them at this moment. She didn't move, which gave the three British shorthairs a chance. Little Gray took the opportunity to press down on the cotton ball hanging from the cat teaser, and gnawed on it. Little Guai and Dodo didn't want to be outdone and fought with it to play. Little Guai, who had grown up, was no longer as petite and weak as before. It was now about the same size as Little Gray, so it didn't show any weakness when fighting. On the other side, Yang Yi finished listening to their song, and began to make coffee for them. As he shook the grinder, he smiled and said, By the way, shouldn't you be in Xiangnan now? Why did you come back to Jiangcheng? Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan were silent for a while. Seeing that they didn't say anything, Yang Yi continued, Last time when you came to say goodbye to me, I was quite happy because you finally went on the path you wanted to go. Also, I was thinking that when your single or album comes out, I'll buy it back and put it on the shelf. Yang Yi pointed to the shelves in the shop, which were all excellent music albums from this world. Many of them were difficult to buy in the music stores outside. Fortunately, he had connections. Through the Sahara online shopping mall, he asked them to help him get a batch of out-of-print albums. However, Yang Yi's words made Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan's faces even more gloomy. It wasn't until Yang Yi served the coffee that Lu Xiaoshu made up his mind. He sighed and said to Yang Yi, Boss, we've been frozen by the company. Frozen? Yang Yi's eyes widened and he asked in confusion, Why? Didn't you say that you'd be a trainee first? Logically speaking, Qianli Chuanshu's song wasn't bad, although it hadn't been tested by the market. How could a song that Yang Yi liked be bad? How could a company be so stupid as to freeze a singer after signing him? This signing is a scam, Miao Chuan couldn't help but say. Lu Xiaoshu asked, Boss, Do you know Ronghua Management Agency? Or have you heard of a new student called Tang Kaitai in Jiangchuan this year? How could Yang Yi not have heard of it? This guy had cheated Du Yuanlei and Guizhi before. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had the chance to let Du Yuanlei film Fairy Tale. He lied to you? Yang Yi frowned and asked. Ronghua belongs to Tang Kaitai's family. They signed us. At first, they said that they liked the song we sang and were going to ask the teachers to train us. Then they would arrange for us to release a single, Lu Xiaoshu said. But it was only a verbal promise. They didn't even write it in the contract. Miao Chuan clenched his fist and said, well, we were all so stupid. At that time, we thought we were going to debut. We were very happy and signed the contract in a daze. Lu Xiaoshu sighed and said, who knew that after a month of training, they would suddenly change their mind? Ronghuada's manager told them that the company wanted to discuss with them to give the song, I Miss Her in the Winter in the North, to Tang Kaitai. Then, as a report, the company would help them to invite songs and use other people's songs to release a record for them. You didn't agree, right? Yang Yi frowned. No, we didn't agree. Lu Xiaoshu shook his head decisively. At that time, they even quarreled with their manager. They were still a little angry because they couldn't tolerate sand in their eyes. How could they agree? Maybe when they just signed the contract, they didn't have the intention to steal their songs. Ronghuada's contract didn't have any relevant clauses. But it wasn't like Ronghuada couldn't do anything to Thousand Miles Chuanshu and Lu Xiaoshu. The training stopped. The dormitory arranged for them to live and also stopped paying rent. They also restricted their right to participate in commercial activities, completely freezing them. The contract is for 7 years. Miao Chuan sighed. The newcomer's contract was actually similar, but Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan stepped into the pit. They weren't willing to compromise, so they had to fight with Ronghuada for 7 years. Previously, we all lived at home. Now, after discussing with the school, although we have to wait until the next school year to resume our studies, the school said that we can live in the dormitory. So we came back temporarily and thought of another way. Lu Xiaoshu gritted his teeth and said, no matter what, even if we have to endure for 7 years, we won't give our songs to those liars. Miao Chuan also nodded vigorously. The result of their discussion was that they would first come back to study. While studying, they would write songs, and then find a solution. Even if they had to wait for 7 years, they would continue to walk on their own musical path. Then what about your source of income? You can't go to commercial performances. How can you have money to live? Yang Yi asked. Although the company froze us according to the contract, we are still qualified as trainees. So, we still have a little salary every month. Although it's not much, it's enough to live on. And before we signed the contract, they gave us a sum of money. We didn't spend it. We saved it. Lu Xiaoshu said. Take one step at a time. Miao Chuan held the coffee for a long time without drinking, and said faintly. Yang Yi looked at these two boys whose dreams had been broken. He was silent. He was a little sad and also a little angry. However, now that he had a certain amount of resources and social status, Yang Yi didn't want to stand by and do nothing. He pondered, trying to find a way to help Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan out of this predicament. What to do? Chapter 386. Although Yang Yi had secretly made the decision to help Qianli Chuanshu and Miao Chuan resolve the contract issue, he did not tell Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan because he was not confident. Yang Yi did not use his own methods this time. It was not worth it. If he personally took action, he would have to take a huge risk. Now that Yang Yi had a big family and business, he did not want to put his family's head on his belt. Unless it was something that made him very angry or something that concerned his family. Yang Yi was not willing to take action easily. Moreover, most problems could be solved with money now. Why should he take a detour? However, when Yang Yi consulted Miss Murphy, an experienced person in the entertainment industry, Murphy expressed her indignation. However, she could not give any opinions. After Mo Xiaowan found out about this matter, she gave Yang Yi a suggestion. You can go through legal channels. First, find someone to check if there are any problems with their contract. Or if Ronghuada did something that violated the contract, You can also take the opportunity to sue them and request to terminate the contract. This required a famous lawyer to help with the lawsuit. Mo Xiaowan did not have any suitable candidates, but Yang Yi still received Lan Caokai's recommendation. The main reason was that she was a little bored at home and wanted to play with Xian Air. Coincidentally, Lan Caokai had not started to get busy. Lan Caokai invited Yang Yi to a club under his name to have tea so that the two little guys could gather and play together. Yang Yi also brought him some specialties from his hometown. Huiyang. Yang Yi took the business card that Lan Caokai handed over and muttered the name on it. Lawyer Hua, a genius in Jiangqing's legal world. This person specializes in helping people with tricky and difficult cases. He doesn't care about ordinary lawsuits. Of course, his fees are not cheap. Lan Caokai introduced him to Yang Yi. At the beginning of last year, he helped me settle a construction site blackmail case. He found the flaws of the other party, collected evidence, and defended in court. This guy, TSK, even my company's legal consultant is in awe of him. Yang Yi kept the business card and prepared to visit him when he was free. Ding Xiang did not stay in her hometown for long. She quickly returned to Jiangcheng. As soon as she put down her luggage, she hurriedly changed into her uniform and went to work in the cafe. Is your grandma's condition better? Yang Yi asked with concern. Ding Xiang looked better than before she went home. She said gratefully to Yang Yi, I'm much better now. I took grandma down the mountain and went to the hospital in the city for treatment. Although she couldn't have an operation because she was old and weak, the doctor gave her medicine. Now she can finally get out of bed and walk. The improvement of her grandma's health gave Ding Xiang a lot of encouragement. It also made her feel relieved to study and work hard in Jiangcheng. Guozi also came to join in the fun. He actively suggested, Sister Ding Xiang, since your parents are no longer around, you can bring your grandma to Jiangcheng. While the property prices in Tingshan district are not high, you can quickly get a loan to buy a house. You will have a place to stay in Jiangcheng and your grandma will have a place to live. You can take care of her nearby. The houses in Tingshan district were not expensive. Jiangcheng was a second-tier city. The coastal area was slightly more expensive. The houses there were close to 20,000 yuan per square meter. Tingshan district was vast and sparsely populated. In addition to the distance from the coastal area, the houses there were less than 5,000 yuan per square meter. In Guozi's opinion, as long as Ding Xiang could gather the money for the down payment, the mortgage would not be a problem. Of course, the down payment was a big problem for Ding Xiang. Guozi had already prepared to be generous and lend money to his friend at the cost of his life. However, Ding Xiang shook her head and said, Our village has a tradition of returning to its roots. Especially now that my grandma is old, she will not be willing to live in the city. It took me a lot of effort to persuade her to go down the mountain to see a doctor. So it is impossible for her to come to Jiangcheng. Guozi scratched his head helplessly and said, Then buy a house for yourself. I don't see you spending the money you have earned. Keep it in the bank and wait for it to depreciate. Let me tell you, investing in houses is the best way to make money these days. Yang Yi looked at their conversation with interest. At this time he smiled and said, Ding Xiang, if you want to buy a house, I can introduce you to him. With his help, it should be no problem to buy a house with the best discount. However, Ding Xiang still shook her head and rejected Yang Yi's kindness. She looked at Yang Yi and Guozi apologetically and said, I'm sorry, brother Yang Yi. I have other uses for the money I saved. I don't need to think about buying a house. With that said, Yang Yi couldn't persuade her any further. However, Guozi still muttered to Ding Xiang, What else can you do? You just save it. I haven't seen you spend money anywhere. Lin Muan and Ranjin also came back. Lin Muan also came to the coffee shop to work. Seeing that Yang Huan was not there, he also helped to take care of the coffee shop staff while playing the piano. Xiaolin, it seems that I have to prepare a uniform for you in the future. Yang Yi said with a smile. Lin Muan smiled shyly and said, Brother Yang, this is what I should do. You give me such a high salary and only let me play the piano for an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon. The workload is too little. Even Ranjin said that I can't live with it. Guozi was eating the wife cake that Lin Mu and brought from Guangdong province. He also muttered to Ding Xiang, Sister Ding Xiang, this wife cake is delicious. I think you can learn to make it. And then? Make it for you? Ding Xiang exposed him. Then put it in the shop to sell. Guozi said shamelessly. Anyway, I will come to support you. Don't worry about not being able to sell it. I saw that it was eaten by you. Guozi complained. I really think it's delicious. Everyone else also thinks it's delicious. Shishi, what do you think? Shishi, who was next to him, was eating happily. Her cute little face was stained with a few sesame seeds. It was unknown how they got there. Hearing Uncle Guozi's question, the little girl raised her head. However, her mouth was full, and she was unwilling to open it. She could only nod vigorously. You see, Guozi pointed at Shishi and smiled proudly. Shishi also likes it. Ding Xiang could only nod and say, since you all like it, then I will study it. At this time, Guozi finally had time. He turned to Lin Mu and then said with a smile, Brother Lin, by the way, today I was at the school's activity center. I saw a poster for a singing competition. I think it's called Singing of Youth. Right now there are auditions in various provinces and cities. Then the outstanding contestants will be selected to participate in the Singing of Youth competition. The competition is organized by the TV station and will be recorded into a TV program. I think you can sign up for it. Singing of Youth? I remember that it's a talent show from Xiangnan TV station. Lin Muan reacted quickly. However, he frowned and said hesitantly, but this competition is too big. It's a nationwide selection of outstanding singers. Can I do it? It doesn't matter if you can or not. You should sign up and give it a try first. Who knows, you might be the champion. Guozi laughed. It was easy for him to say that. How is that possible? In the past, I couldn't even win a competition organized by Jiangqing TV station. Lin Mu, and said with a bitter smile. Yang Yi also encouraged him to participate. Actually, I think Guozi is right. No matter the result, you should try hard. Even if you don't succeed, you won't regret it. Moreover, if you can win, not to mention the overall champion, even if it's just a regional champion, I think it's a good result. Lin Muan was convinced. Chapter 387. Just as Yang Yi and Guozi were encouraging Lin Mu and to participate in the talent show, Murphy had also arrived in Shanghai to film Jixin interview. It seems like my prediction was quite accurate. It didn't take long for us to meet again. Luo Xian and Murphy met backstage, and she gave Murphy a hug as she spoke with a smile. I didn't expect it. I'm still very grateful for Sister Luo Xian's invitation. Murphy smiled shyly. I should be the one thanking you this time. Your influence is not ordinary now. Jixin interview is riding on your popularity. Luo Xian joked. You're too kind, Sister Luo Xian. Murphy quickly waved her hand. Compared to the past, Murphy no longer gave off a cold feeling. Perhaps it was because she was with Yang Yi and her happiness had diluted the isolation in her heart. However, it was still difficult for Luo Xian to detect the changes in Murphy. After some small talk, the recording of the show began early. Murphy wasn't a young lady, so it was her first time participating in Jixin interview. She had already participated in one episode of Jixin interview and was familiar with the process of the show. 6 years ago, she was well prepared and reached the peak of her career with the popular song Strangers. However, she suddenly retired and quickly disappeared from the public eye. Today, 6 years later, she carried the doubts and ridicule of others and returned to the peak with a high-quality album and an amazing voice. January is the carnival of the music industry, and also her event. All the spotlights and flashes are shining for her. Some people say that it's a miracle, but I believe that her success came from her hard work and her determination to not give up. Welcome, Murphy, to Jixin interview again. As usual, Luo Xian gave a long introduction to Murphy. This time, the applause from the audience was much louder. After all, when it came to Murphy, who wouldn't know her? Thank you, Sister Luo Xian. Thank you, everyone. I'm very happy to be invited to Jishin's interview again. Murphy walked out and greeted them politely as usual. Murphy, actually, the last time you came, I was very dissatisfied. This time, after your album was released, I was even more dissatisfied. Do you know why? However, Luo Xian did not play by the rules. After exchanging pleasantries with Murphy, she pretended to blame her. Murphy remembered that she had never seen such a scene in the script. However, she knew that this was one of Luo Xian's characteristics, so she did not panic. She simply asked in confusion, "Why?" "Because the last time I told you that my favorite song of yours is Coming Across the Ocean to See You. This love song is so heart-wrenching. The lyrics express the repressed emotions to the extreme, and your singing also explodes the repressed emotions in the lyrics to the extreme." Luo Xian was first impressed, but then her expression changed. She complained, "But you actually hit an equally good song, Listen to the Sea, which I personally think is even better than I Came Across the Ocean to See You. You only sang First Dream on my show." "Ah, that's the company's arrangement." Murphy finally understood that Luo Xian was jealous. She said awkwardly, "Listen to the Sea is a song that can only be used when the album is released. Plus, First Dream is actually a very good song. But I still like Listen to the Sea." Luo Xian pretended to throw a tantrum. "Then I'll sing this song for Sister Luo Xian tonight. Although the song has already been released, there's no time limit for music, right? As long as it's a good song, even if it's not the first time you sing it, it can still bring joy to everyone," Murphy said as she had an idea. Luo Xian did not intend to make things difficult for Murphy. She was only joking. Since Murphy had found a way, she did not think of a way to help Murphy out. Indeed, music is like wine. It can withstand the test of time. Plus, the longer it lasts, the more mellow it becomes. "Murphy, you said that just now. Later, when it's time for the guest performance, don't sing another song for me," Luo Xian said with a smile. The two of them sang together as if the song had just been confirmed. The audience below the stage was pleasantly surprised. They liked Murphy's song very much and applauded excitedly. The interview continued. Luo Xian asked Murphy how she felt about returning to the top. "Are you very excited? Is this spring festival very happy?" However, Mo Fei shook her head. She smiled slightly and said, "The results I have achieved so far have actually become history. No matter what the media says about me, whether it is good or bad, I can accept it calmly and persevere. I hope that in the future, I can bring more good songs to my fans who like me." I didn't expect Murphy to have such a good attitude. She doesn't indulge in her past achievements, nor is she easily satisfied. She sings conscientiously. This attitude is something that many singers can learn from. Luo Xian was a little surprised. She sighed and said, "I thought that you would be a little proud after being crowned as the Queen of Songs again. I didn't expect you to not be at all." "That's because the title of Queen of Songs isn't reliable," Murphy explained gently. "Sister Luo Xian, look at me. 6 years ago, I was also crowned as the Queen of Songs after receiving a platinum album." Luo Xian had done her homework. She smiled and said, "That's right. Back then there were many nicknames. For example, Queen of Songs." "Maybe it's because I'm not good at communicating with people," Murphy said embarrassedly. "There's also Queen of Songs, Youngest Queen of Songs, and so on. Now that you think about it, don't you feel that time flies?" Luo Xian sighed. "Indeed, but the title of Queen of Songs doesn't have much use. I left the music industry for about 5 years. When I came back, my popularity had dropped. Many young audience members didn't even recognize me anymore." Mo Fei said to Luo Xian, "So, I've understood something. All the glory I've received now is just history. If I want my fans to continue liking and remembering my work, I have to keep working hard and producing outstanding works." Murphy was not entirely right. There was another phenomenon in the entertainment industry, and that was idol singers. They didn't need to produce excellent works all the time. As long as they showed up frequently and interacted with their fans enthusiastically, as long as they maintained their handsome or beautiful faces, they could continue to be popular. Chao Tsong Tsong was like that before. Murphy actually had the ability to become an idol singer, but her ambition wasn't there. She was usually like the mysterious man, and rarely participated in variety shows. Luo Xian knew about it, but she didn't intend to continue on this issue. She didn't want to offend those fans who were obsessed with idol singers, so she smiled and continued Mo Fei's words. Speaking of excellent works, we all know that the reason why Mo Fei's record is so successful is also inseparable from the hard work of a man. Who is Murphy's man? I don't need to say it out loud, do I? Luo Xian turned to the audience and smiled. She was good at adjusting the atmosphere of the show. Suddenly, the audience was very excited and shouted the man's name cooperatively. Mu Xiang. Chapter 388. Luo Xian was actually trying to stir up trouble by asking this question. After all, Murphy's man was a very strong hint. How could Luo Xian not understand? However, this was one of the main features of her show. She constantly dug holes for the guests to see if she could dig out any special information. She was already prepared to explain what she meant if Murphy scolded or refuted her. For example, she would smile and say, "I actually didn't mean that. Isn't there an old saying? Behind every successful man, there is a woman who silently supports him. However, I feel that regardless of gender or special relationship, behind every success, there are many people who support us." However, to her surprise, Murphy did not refute. Instead, she chose to smile and admit it. This also saved her the trouble of trying to lie. She had no idea that Murphy and Mu Xiang, or rather, the person behind this alias, Yang Yi, were actually a couple. At this moment, Murphy's brain short-circuited. Perhaps it was because she spent the spring festival happily at Yang Yi's house that she forgot to hide it. Murphy was stunned for a moment. Then, she pursed her lips and smiled. Yes, Mr. Mu Xiang is indeed the person I should thank the most for achieving such good results this time. Thank you for his support. Murphy did not expand on the support here. Perhaps the audience would think that she was thanking Mu Xiang for his support, but Murphy knew that his support for her was not limited to that. Luo Xian was very smart. Although Murphy did not express it clearly, she could still see some clues from the subtle changes in Murphy's expression. Auntie Luo's beautiful eyes darted around. She smiled and asked, "Murphy, Mu Xiang wrote 12 such classic songs for you. However, what I want to ask is, will you continue to work together for your next album? I'm looking forward to it." Murphy was stunned for a moment. She first nodded. Then, she felt that it was a little inappropriate, so she changed her tone and said in an uncertain tone, "We should work together again, right? I really like the songs written by Mr. Mu Xiang. I hope to have more opportunities to work together." However, Luo Xian laughed in her heart. She had gotten the information she wanted. If there was no one behind this, Luo Xian would eat the microphone. On the last episode, Luo Xian had felt that there was something wrong with Murphy's expression. Also, it was unlikely that a stranger would write 12 songs for her just because he liked her voice. Such a statement could not fool someone like her. However, Luo Xian was not in a hurry to take advantage of the situation. Instead, she continued to talk about the topics in the script. After that, it was time for Murphy's performance. Murphy sang "Listen to the Sea" as promised. It was a live version with no lip-syncing. There was only the accompaniment and her real voice. Murphy once again showed the audience her superb singing skills and vocal range. "Listen, it's the sound of the sea crying. Isn't this sea a little too sentimental? It cries until dawn." The audience below the stage couldn't help but shake their heads when they heard Mo Fei's performance. Mo Fei's accent, control of the high notes, and long breath were really intoxicating. After the song was finished, there was a roar of applause. Luo Xian was the same. She kept clapping her hands. Even after she and Murphy sat down on the stage, she could not help but clap her hands and exclaim, "Murphy, you sang this song very well. I remember a music critic said this about you and this song. Let me read it for you." She picked up the card and read it word for word. The song "Listen to the Sea" is very compatible with Murphy. Murphy's voice and singing skills are at the top of the industry. Moreover, From the Previous Strangers and Crossing the Sea to See You. Her love songs are very infectious. It can be said that she can move people with just her words. However, the industry has never been able to give a very pertinent evaluation of Murphy, because she has never encountered a song like Listen to the Sea that can fully reflect her excellent voice and singing skills. So we can say that Murphy made Listen to the Sea a song, and Listen to the Sea made Murphy. Now we can finally see a perfect Murphy. Luo Xian raised her head and pointed at Murphy with a smile. She said to the audience, "Moreover, I want to tell you that although the new song period has passed, Listen to the Sea is still at the top of the major charts, the KTV chart, the radio chart, the song sales chart, and so on." The audience below the stage applauded one after another. Their faces were numb from Luo Xian's words. They were very excited and felt a sense of pride. "Thank you." Murphy did not feel much about these honors. She calmly thanked the audience for their applause and then said to Luo Xian with a smile, "Indeed, I am also very grateful to Mr. Mu Ziong for writing Listen to the Sea for me. That's why I said that he is the man who understands you the best. That's not too much, is it? He can write such a song for you that is so compatible with you." Luo Xian suddenly said with a smile. This trick was more obvious. Murphy was not so stupid that she could not see such an obvious trap set by sister Luo Xian. Luo Xian deliberately made it so obvious. She was also worried that Murphy would jump into the trap she set for the effect of the show, and affect her personal relationship with Murphy. Since it was so obvious, Murphy could openly deny it if it was not as ambiguous as Luo Xian thought. However, Murphy hesitated. She wanted to deny it, but she felt that it was against her will. Luo Xian was right. Yang Yi was the man who understood her the best. Although she could not admit or openly confess to the public that he was her man, what did it matter if she hinted a little? Murphy thought that her relationship with Yang Yi would be completely public in a few months, so she gritted her teeth and smiled at Luo Xian as usual. "That's right. Mr. Mu Ziong is indeed more familiar with my characteristics. The song Listen to the Sea he wrote did indeed force out all my potential. Then I guess Listen to the Sea, although it was placed at the end of the album, should also be your favorite song among the 12 songs, right? Let me say first, I like this song the most in this album." Luo Xian looked at Murphy meaningfully, but did not continue to dwell on the original question. It was better not to expose too much. If she dug out all of it, it would be a bit disrespectful to the guests. This level was just right, and it would also be a good topic to talk about. Murphy shook her head and said with a smile, "Sister Luo Xian, if you watch my micro-broadcasting, you should know that I once answered the same question on micro-broadcasting. My favorite song is not Listen to the Sea, but Happy and Unfettered Lament. This song is not difficult, but it has a strong Chinese style." Micro-broadcasting? This is a very popular social media app recently. I know. My assistant helped me register before. Let's follow each other later. It seems that an old woman like me has to keep up with the times. Luo Xian smiled and said, "However, Murphy, you said that Happy and Unfettered Lament is your favorite song, which surprised me. What is the Chinese style you mentioned?" The Chinese style refers to the use of the precious wealth of our traditional culture in the creation of lyrics, classical Chinese or ancient poetry as the main style of rhetoric. Of course, the style of the song is also inclined to the traditional Eastern performance with the addition of our traditional instruments as accompaniment. As she said this, Murphy seemed to become cheerful all of a sudden, and she was tirelessly introducing it to Luo Xian. It seems that our Murphy really likes this type of Chinese-style song very much. However, I also know that Happy and Unfettered Lament has also received very good reviews among music critics. Some music critics even think that this song has opened up a new genre in modern pop music. Mr. Mu Ziong is indeed very talented. He has a variety of creative styles. Not only can he create a masterpiece, but he can also create a sect. This is really rare. Luo Xian exclaimed. While others were praising Mu Ziong, Murphy also proudly puffed out her chest, as if she was also proud of Mu Ziong. Chapter 389. Yang Yi nodded with satisfaction after playing the music accompaniment he had been working on for the whole afternoon. He took off his headphones, plugged the USB into the computer in the center console, and copied the accompaniment. While unplugging the USB and turning off the phone, Yang Yi looked at his watch. It was just in time to pick up Xixi, who was already in kindergarten. After coming out of the recording studio, Yang Yi bumped into Xiao Ai. Xiao Ai, who now held an important position in the studio, was also in high spirits. She was dressed like a white-collar elite. Xiao Ai was not like Mo Xiaowan, who could ignore Yang Yi. She did not dare to neglect him. "Boss, are you done?" Yang Yi came to the studio's recording studio to record the accompaniment. Although it was just an accompaniment, he could also record it in a recording studio near the school. However, Yang Yi thought that such a big thing must be done perfectly, so he still chose his studio's top-notch and luxurious recording studio. But doing this in the studio had the risk of exposure, so Yang Yi only informed Xiao Ai. He was still a little worried and said, "Well, it's done. But remember, you must keep it a secret. Don't tell anyone else." Xiao Ai nodded quickly, but she looked at Yang Yi's back and thought with some doubts. "I can't tell anyone else, but doesn't Sister Xiaowan know?" "No, I can't tell anyone else. Sister Xiaowan is the first to know, so I can't tell anyone else." Xiao Ai suddenly realized what Boss Yang meant. Regardless of Xiao Ai's words, Yang Yi picked up Xixi from kindergarten. After dinner and tidying up, Yang Yi called Xixi in front of him. "Xixi, Dad has a big plan tomorrow, and I need your help." Yang Yi squatted on one knee, put his hands on his daughter's shoulders, and said seriously. Xixi couldn't understand her father's seriousness. She blinked her big eyes curiously, gestured with her two small hands, and asked, "What big chicken flour? Is it that big?" Yang Yi was at a loss for words. After a while, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "It's not chicken flowers, it's a plan. Isn't your mother coming back tomorrow? Dad is going to propose to her." "What is a proposal?" Xixi spelled it correctly this time, but she still couldn't understand it. "Proposing is the first step before marriage. Didn't Dad tell you many stories about princes and princesses getting married? But before the wedding, there's still a step to propose. Daddy wants to ask Mommy if you're willing to marry me." Yang Yi patiently introduced to Xixi. "Then is a proposal a kiss?" Xixi's eyes lit up. She thought of many cases. For example, Snow White was kissed by a prince, and the two got married. Sleeping Beauty was also kissed by a prince, and the two got married. "No, you can't kiss before marriage." Yang Yi became serious. Although he found his own words funny as a strict father, he had to correct Xixi's wrong thinking. He didn't want the little girl to think that she was going to be married after kissing someone. This strict father not only kissed her mother before marriage, but also, back to the topic, Yang Yi spent a lot of effort to explain to Xixi what he was going to do tomorrow. In the end he said, "So Dad's proposal tomorrow needs your cooperation, Xixi. Xixi, can you do it?" "Yes," the little girl said crisply. Her face was full of excitement, and she felt that it was very fun. "But Mommy will call you tonight. You can't tell Mommy. This is a surprise for Mommy. If you tell Mommy in advance, it won't be fun." Yang Yi reminded his daughter worriedly. Xixi nodded. She covered her little mouth, and her eyes curved into crescents. She said in a muffled voice, "I won't tell Mom." "Then let's practice today," Yang Yi said, rubbing his hands together. Everything had to be set up first. Xixi curiously followed behind her father like a penguin. She stuck her neck out to watch him fiddle with those things. Finally, Yang Yi held a big basket of rose petals and began to sprinkle them on the stairs, the living room, and the corridor. Finally, he sprinkled a big heart shape on the floor of the living room. Yang Yi took 2 steps back, wanting to see the effect. In the end, he almost stepped on Xixi. He turned his head to look at the little girl with big, bright eyes. He didn't care if she understood or not, and explained with a smile, "These are temporarily used for practice. We'll clean them up later. Tomorrow, we'll buy fresh rose petals." Xixi really didn't understand. She blinked her eyes and said, But I think it's very beautiful." After setting up, Yang Yi took out the violin that Murphy had given him from the study. He walked out while playing. Xixi sat on the sofa, her two slender legs hanging down. She looked at her father as he walked slowly towards her with a smile on his face, accompanied by the beautiful sound of string music. Yang Yi's violin was melodious. It wasn't like, "He's a pirate," which had a very fast rhythm. Instead, the rhythm was very slow. Just like people's love, it didn't need to be vigorous. Instead, it expressed the emotions in a slow melody. The long bowstring was swayed by Yang Yi's arm on the delicate and classical violin. His left hand's fingers pressed on the four strings. Every movement was very natural. At this moment, his tall and sturdy figure and tough face seemed to be covered with a soft glow at this moment. It was warm and tender, and it tugged at one's heartstrings. Yang Yi played in front of his daughter, while closing his eyes. He carefully felt the nostalgia and love brought by the song. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but curl up into a smile. When the song ended, he slowly put down the violin. Then he put away the bow and the violin together. "How was it? Shishi, is it good?" Yang Yi smiled at his daughter. Shishi was becoming more and more qualified to appreciate music. When her father was playing, she didn't make any movements. Only when her father asked her did she move. She happily jumped in front of her father and said, "It's super good. Papa is also super cool. Shishi likes it so much." The little girl clasped her hands and said sincerely. Yang Yi smiled, reached out his hand and high-fived his daughter. He smiled and said, "That's good. Tomorrow, I've decided to use this song. By the way, next, Dad will do this action and then sing a song." Yang Yi gestured for a while, then took out a small box and gestured to Shishi. "You tomorrow, hide in Dad's study. When Dad finishes singing, wear your most beautiful dress, come out of the study with a flower and hand it to Dad." "Okay. Okay." Shishi nodded happily. Now that she had a task, she was full of energy and didn't have to watch from the side. In order to strengthen his daughter's memory so that she wouldn't make any mistakes, Yang Yi took her through the motions. "Then let's practice. Daddy is here now. After you finish playing the violin, you can start singing." "Okay, Dad is done singing." Yang Yi turned his head and shouted in the direction of the study. "You have to take the initiative to come out. Dad won't remind you when the time comes." "Hee. I know." The little girl tiptoed and opened the door. Then she ran out happily with the small box. No, slow down like a lady. At noon the next day, when Yang Yi was still making the final arrangements, the spy in front of him, Comrade Mo Shawan, sent a message. "Brother-in-law, we're boarding the plane. We'll be home in 2 hours at most. Get ready." Seeing this message, Yang Yi's heart couldn't help but beat fast. Chapter 390. Murphy actually felt that something was wrong today. When she woke up early in the morning from the hotel, Mo Shawan had brought her a sleeveless black dress and a pair of long black gloves. She looked extremely elegant. If there was a need to give an example, then this little black dress was a little like the classic picture of Audrey Hepburn with a smoking pipe in Yang Yi's previous life. Murphy was tall and beautiful. If she wore it, her charm would not be inferior to Hepburn's. However, it was winter now. Murphy, who never liked to wear clothes against the season to cater to her fans, didn't want to wear this dress that looked very cold. However, Mo Shawan gave her a thick cashmere windbreaker. It wasn't cold, but it was even more awkward to wear it. "I didn't bring any other clothes." Mo Shawan told a lie that no one would believe, but Murphy believed it. She didn't let her preferences bring trouble to Mo Shawan. She still wore these clothes and boarded the plane together. There were still many media reporters waiting at the entrance of the hotel and around the airport. The moment they boarded, they took a few photos of her. However, everyone could only see Murphy's windbreaker and couldn't see the dress inside. This was also the strange part. Without thinking too much, Murphy returned to Jiangcheng. Mo Shawan got in the car and easily got rid of the paparazzi. Now that Murphy was popular, there were more and more paparazzi following her. It was very annoying, so Mo Shawan could only drive around the ring highway and use it to get rid of the paparazzi. The car stopped in front of a coffee shop at the corner of the street. Before Murphy got out of the car, she turned her head and asked, "Shawan, why don't you go up and drink something to warm your stomach?" Mo Shawan was much more alert. She smiled and said, "No need, sister. I also need to go back and rest. You and brother-in-law have fun." If Mo Shawan wanted to go up, then Murphy could roughly guess that there was a surprise waiting for her, just like last time on her birthday. Unfortunately, Mo Shawan saw through her little trick and did not reveal any flaws. Seeing that Murphy had gone to the backyard, Mo Shawan started the car and took out her phone to send a message. "Brother-in-law, my sister is here. She's going upstairs. Hurry up and start." Mo Shawan didn't plan to stay and watch. Although it was a crucial moment for her cousin, she would have to eat dog food if she stayed. Mo Shawan decided to just watch the video. If it was too boring, she could just skip it. She couldn't torture herself. Back at Murphy's place, she was very curious. It was already Saturday. Why weren't Yang Yi and Shishi playing in the coffee shop downstairs? Why were they still at home? However, when she opened the door, Murphy sensed that something was wrong. The air was filled with the fragrance of roses. Although it had been blown away by the spring breeze, Murphy was still very sensitive to the fragrance of flowers. She could vaguely feel that something was about to happen. Stepping on the stairs to the second floor, Murphy finally understood where the fragrance came from. Now Murphy was stepping on rose petals. Or rather, the entire staircase was covered with rose petals, as if it had turned into a flower staircase. Could it be? No matter how stupid Murphy was, she understood. With every step she took, her heart began to pound. Walking upstairs, she realized that the corridor was also covered with rose petals, forming a bright and beautiful red carpet. The heater was on upstairs. Murphy took off her jacket and hung it on the hanger. Then she slowly walked in. The living room was very quiet. The coffee table in the middle had been moved away. The rose petals and plastic candles formed a heart shape. The flickering candlelight was very beautiful. Murphy's crystal clear eyes reflected the flickering candlelight. She seemed to be mesmerized. But where was she? It seemed that the whole room was empty. Murphy was a little surprised and a little confused. What's going on? Suddenly, the door of the study opened. The melodious sound of a violin came out. It was as if a lover was sobbing, and it immediately plucked Murphy's heartstrings. Note 1. She turned around and saw Yang Yi, who was wearing the same black suit, playing the violin and slowly walking out of the study with a smile. Yang Yi was wearing a suit? Yes. Yang Yi was wearing a suit. This was the first time in nearly a year that Murphy had seen him wear a suit. However, this suit was different from the suits of the security guards and bodyguards. It was tailor-made. It was not long or short, and it was very slim. Murphy also didn't expect that Yang Yi would be so handsome after wearing a suit. Yang Yi, who was 1.87 meters tall, should have been a clothes hanger. However, his usual casual clothes always covered his charm. Now that he was wearing a suit, his slender and tall body, as well as his strong and healthy figure under the clothes, were fully revealed. His originally robust face wasn't considered handsome, but under the suit, he actually had the unique handsomeness of a mature uncle. It made Murphy's heart, which was no longer a young girl, beat like a young girl's. Of course, the most beautiful was still the violin song. Murphy had never heard it before, but she was also intoxicated from the beginning. The song wasn't like classical music, which had a complicated and rigorous structure. Instead, it was very much like pop music. Every section was very tight and had a distinct melody. Even if there were changes, they were changes based on this melody. Of course, Murphy didn't overly pursue rigor. She liked the melody that Yang Yi was playing. She always had the feeling that she couldn't help but hum it out. It seems that there should be lyrics here. Murphy had an inexplicable feeling. Just like how Murphy felt before, the long violin sound was like a lover's whisper. It was also like the love that Murphy was looking forward to. In the slow rhythm, it gradually sublimated. Yang Yi stopped a few steps in front of Murphy. As he played the violin, his expression seemed to be intoxicated and also seemed to be very calm. However, Murphy could see that in his deep eyes, only her figure was reflected. Was this the marriage proposal that he wanted to prepare for her? Murphy's thoughts suddenly moved. She woke up from the beautiful violin sound. She looked at Yang Yi with some surprise and understood in her heart. Although she was already mentally prepared to go and get the marriage certificate with Yang Yi without any ceremony, her heart was still looking forward to it. Murphy liked Yang Yi's current state very much. She didn't like to propose in public. Although many girls liked others to witness the results of their love, Murphy didn't like it. She thought that love was about two people cherishing each other. With you and me, it was enough. Yang Yi chose to propose at home, just in time to take care of her soft heart. The world of flowers, paved with flowers, and the candles arranged in a heart shape were simple but not simple. It was also perfectly in line with the romance she wanted. What's more, the person she loved the most played a violin song for her. Murphy, who was easily satisfied, was so touched that she only wanted to wait for Yang Yi to ask, "Are you willing?" And then she would respond loudly and affirmatively. She was a little impatient. Of course, how could she be so unreserved? The song didn't take long to finish. Yang Yi put down the violin. Murphy asked shyly, "What song is this? Is it an original? Why haven't I heard of it before?" Yang Yi raised his index finger at her and smiled. "There's more." Yang Yi picked up a remote control from the side and pressed it gently. The song just now played from the stereo, but it was no longer a pure violin song. It was a combination of piano and other instruments. What was going on? Just when Murphy was a little surprised, Yang Yi opened his mouth and sang, "When you're old, when your hair is white." Chapter 391. Murphy's previous guess was verified. Yang Yi really used this tune to write a song. Before Murphy had time to feel surprised, she was attracted by the first line of the lyrics. "When you're old, your hair is white, and you're sleepy." Although women were over 30 and the last thing they wanted was to hear people mention that they were old, Yang Yi slowly sang such a sentence in this beautiful melody, with the uniqueness of a pledge of eternal love. "When I'm old, my hair is white, what will he do? When you're old, you can't walk, napping by the fire, reminiscing your youth." Murphy was eager to hear the latter part, wanting to know how deeply Yang Yi was going to confess. Although Yang Yi's voice could now cross many ranges, what he didn't deliberately change was his unique magnetic voice. Although it had some vicissitudes of life, the sense of time was the best seasoning for this song. How many people have loved your youthful and happy times, adoring your beauty? False or true, only one person still loves your devout soul, loves the wrinkles on your old face. When singing this part, Yang Yi looked at Murphy affectionately, as if telling her that that person was standing in front of her. Murphy couldn't help but tremble in her heart, and tears couldn't help but gush out of her beautiful eyes. The first line was simply singing the reality that Murphy was facing now. As a singer, since her debut at a young age, she had been pursued and praised by countless people because of her devastatingly beautiful appearance. Yes, so many people liked her when she was young, liked her beautiful appearance. Even now, under her micro-broadcasting, there were always many fans shouting, "Murphy, don't cry, we love you." What cry? Wasn't it just singing, "Listen to the sea. Listen, the sound of the sea crying"? But what others said, Murphy didn't care at all, because those people only came for her appearance, for her fame. Just like before, when she suffered a setback and had nothing, the fans who shouted that they loved her now were infatuated with some celebrity at that time. If one day, she also grew old like the song said, and her old face was full of wrinkles, would those people continue to love her? Or would they still remember Murphy, who had once been crazy about her? Only he in front of her, would never leave her. Yang Yi didn't sound like a confession, more like a confession. Love your devout soul. Loves the wrinkles on your old face. When this sentence was sung, Murphy felt that the happiness in her heart was about to overflow. Who didn't like the adoring eyes of their lover when they were young? That was the greatest affirmation of one's appearance. But that was only the initial joy of love. When it came to marriage, who wouldn't worry about gains and losses? After all, youth was gone. No matter how beautiful the face was, it would disappear in the blink of an eye. Only love that was deep in the bones and immersed in the depths of the soul could last long. This sentence was a pledge of undying love in another sense. When you're old, your eyebrows drooping, the light is dim and uncertain. Yang Yi's rhythm slowed down again, creating a warm and sweet atmosphere of old age. When the wind blows, your news, this is the song in my heart." The accompaniment was raised again. "How many people have loved your youthful singing, loved your beauty, feigned or not? Only one person still loves your devout soul, loves the wrinkles on your old face." Whether it was the melody or the charm of Yang Yi's singing, it was Murphy's favorite part. She looked at Yang Yi with blurred eyes. This tall man seemed to be the best support in the world. "When you're old, your eyebrows drooping." Yang Yi put the violin and bowstring on the table of the TV cabinet. As he sang softly, he reached out his hand to Murphy. At this moment, Murphy only had Yang Yi in her eyes. She pursed her lips, held back the tears of happiness in her eyes, and happily held Yang Yi's big hand. "When I'm old, I really hope that this song is for you." Yang Yi sang the last sentence with himself as the protagonist, but it also had a profound meaning. Hand in hand, grow old together. When we're old, you and I will both have white hair, but we can still look at each other and sing love songs like this to each other. This is probably the most beautiful wish, right? Murphy looked at Yang Yi's face in a daze, listening in a daze. She didn't even notice that she was led to the sofa by Yang Yi, sitting next to the heart-shaped candlelight array. If one looked carefully, the living room, even the corridor, and the foyer were all equipped with single-lens reflex cameras, DV cameras, and so on. Right now, facing Yang Yi and Murphy was a professional camera with a flashing red light. It was the same camera that Wang Chao had used to shoot De Yuanlei's movie. This was the most memorable romantic moment. How could Yang Yi just propose and be done with it? He had consulted Wang Chao and arranged for the best camera position. He even borrowed cameras from Wang Chao and other photography students, including his own single-lens reflex camera. There were 6 sets of cameras used today, and 3 were placed in different angles in the living room. He strived to preserve this beautiful scene from all angles. Of course, once the cameras were turned on, Yang Yi didn't have to worry about it anymore. And in the lens of the professional camera in the main position, Mo Fei was wearing a pure black dress. Her thin shoulders were slightly exposed, and a pair of black velvet gloves that covered her elbows. She gently propped herself up on the edge of the sofa, elegant like a black swan. But under the flickering candlelight, this black swan's beautiful face and beautiful eyes intertwined to form an intoxicated expression. It seemed to be telling a beautiful story. A high and mighty princess graced the world with her presence, but she didn't put on any airs. Without hesitation, she fell in love with the man in front of her, who had begun to kneel down on one knee for her. There were still some differences from yesterday's rehearsal. Yang Yi performed a little magic trick here. His 2 hands clasped together, and then a blooming rosebud with delicate green leaves appeared. Under Murphy's surprised gaze, he handed it to her, and helped her take off the glove on her left hand while he was at it. It couldn't be helped. Who told the plan to be unable to keep up with the changes? Mo Shaowan actually made Murphy wear a glove. But the flaws couldn't obscure the beauty. Yang Yi's movements were smooth and didn't look out of place at all. At this moment, the door to the study was pushed open again. A little girl wearing a beautiful white princess dress slowly walked out with a small black box in her hands. She had a sincere expression on her face as she slowly walked over. Dad's song was very pleasant to listen to, but she didn't understand the deep meaning of the lyrics. She wasn't moved to the point of being distracted like her mother. The little girl still remembered her father's request. After her father finished singing, just like yesterday's rehearsal, she stood on her tiptoes and opened the door to the study. Then, holding the box, she walked over step by step. In order to complete her task well, she was very serious. Every step she took was strictly according to yesterday's rehearsal. Wearing this white princess dress, the little girl looked like a little angel. That serious expression of hers, under the contrast of the candlelight, appeared very sincere. "Thank you, Shishi." Yang Yi took the diamond ring box from his daughter's hands, and lovingly patted her little head. However, the little girl who had completed her task couldn't leave yet. She stood to the side and witnessed this wonderful moment. Yang Yi, who had already knelt on one knee, opened the box in front of the happy Murphy holding the rose, revealing the sparkling and translucent diamond ring inside. But Yang Yi wasn't in a hurry to propose. He first recited a poem. Chapter 392. Yang Yi looked at Murphy affectionately and softly recited, I have walked on many bridges, seen many clouds, drank many types of wine, but I have only ever loved a person at the best age. The poem was very short and not at all dragging, but it expressed Yang Yi's love for Murphy very well. Even this expression was very deep. Murphy would not know that Yang Yi was referring to his experience in both lives. He had walked so many roads and seen so many sceneries, but the one he loved was only this Murphy who was in her prime and blooming at her most beautiful moment. The poem was very beautiful. It was written by Shen Kongwen, who wrote Border Town in his previous life. This was a love letter that Mr. Shen wrote to his wife, Zhang Zhaohe, who was still his student at that time, when Mr. Shen was 26 years old. In order to pursue Zhang Zhaohe, Mr. Shen wrote hundreds of love letters, and this was just one of them. Not only this one, Yang Yi also read another one, which was also very suitable for the Murphy that he liked. I was lucky to see you smile once again, beside the lotus pot that was scattered by the night breeze. There was a fragrance in your smile. I was not surprised at all. Originally, when you smiled, there was something more refreshing than a fragrance. However, when Yang Yi chose this love poem as his proposal, Yang Yi was still hesitant, because in reality, the love between Mr. Shen and Miss Zhang was not as perfect as this poem. Note 1. But Yang Yi later understood that he and Murphy were different from Mr. Shen and Miss Zhang. He and Murphy had similar personalities and the same hobbies. It could be said that both of them were in line with each other's best imaginations. Their union was a match made in heaven, and not because of a little romance when they were young. So what if he used this poem? So after reciting this poem, Yang Yi looked at Murphy affectionately. He took out the diamond ring from the box, raised it gently and said softly, I don't want to search anymore, and I don't want to wait anymore because with you, my life is enough. Murphy, will you marry me? Murphy was already trying her best to hold it in, but a teardrop still fell from the corner of her eye. She had been pursing her lips, but in the end, she couldn't help but smile, revealing a few white teeth. Her face was brimming with joy. Actually, I also have something to say to you. Murphy didn't nod her head immediately. Instead, she tried her best to say the words that she had already prepared in her heart. If I hadn't met you, I could have endured the loneliness. Murphy had forgotten where she had read this sentence from. She softly said, but now, I find that my world can't be without you. Yes, Yang Yi, I am willing to marry you. Murphy stretched out her left hand and said those words seriously. She finally burst into tears and her voice choked up. She was so happy that tears blurred her beautiful eyes. Yang Yi gently held Murphy's left hand and put the diamond ring on her ring finger. The moment the ring was put on, it was as if a ceremony had been completed. There was a mysterious connection between the two of them. Why are you crying? Yang Yi pulled Mo-Fei up from the sofa, stood up, and hugged her into his arms. He gently wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and cheeks lovingly, and said softly, this is a happy event. You should be happy and smile. Murphy nodded vigorously. She hugged Yang Yi's waist and smiled brightly. Her watery eyes turned into crescents and tears came out of her eyes. On the side, she blinked her big eyes and looked at her parents. The little girl couldn't understand the conversation just now, but she could still feel the strong love between her parents. However, the little girl waited for a long time, and saw that her parents were still standing motionlessly in each other's arms. She was a little anxious for them. That's not right. She couldn't wait any longer. She lifted her heavy little skirt and walked over, tugging at her father's suit jacket. At this time, Yang Yi woke up from the sweet moment with Murphy. He looked down at the little girl in confusion. Papa, you haven't kissed me yet. She raised her head and said innocently, you can't kiss before marriage. Yang Yi said that at that time, but she was confused. Proposing and getting married were two different concepts. She didn't understand it clearly at that time, so she thought that it was not allowed to kiss before the proposal. In other words, they had to kiss after the ceremony. It was a mistake. When the little girl said that, Yang Yi and Murphy were both stunned. She thought that her father didn't understand, so the little girl commanded seriously, you have to kiss Mom. At this time, Murphy finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. She recovered from being touched and happy just now and returned to her normal state. She patted Yang Yi's chest and said angrily, "You're teaching Shishi these things." Yang Yi opened his mouth and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was also wronged. The next day was Sunday. The Civil Affairs Bureau was also on holiday, so they couldn't get the marriage certificate yet. However, Yang Yi still got up early and kept a good schedule. However, Murphy, who was too happy last night, was still sleeping soundly with Yang Yi. However, the corners of her mouth were still filled with a happy smile. Her white and smooth jade arm was outside the quilt, and the ring on her ring finger was very conspicuous. She couldn't bear to take it off because she said that when she went to work, she couldn't wear the ring for the time being. Now that she was at home, she didn't want to take it off even if she could wear it. Even when they were climbing to the top last night, she looked at Yang Yi's eyes in a daze and the ring on her hand that was stroking Yang Yi's face. Yang Yi put her arm under the quilt and kissed Murphy's forehead dotingly. Then he put on his clothes and went out for a run and to buy vegetables. Today, Yang Yi was in a very good mood. When he was shopping for groceries, the aunties in the market noticed that something was amiss. They laughed and teased Yang Yi, asking him what was the joyous occasion. When he came back to prepare breakfast, Yang Yi was also in high spirits. He hummed a song and waved the iron shovel. Shishi was awakened by his singing. The little girl, wearing pajamas, rubbed her hazy eyes and walked out of the bedroom in a daze. She first found her missing mother in the second bedroom skillfully. Then she pouted and ran to the kitchen to complain to her father. "Papa, Mom is not good. She even slept in." Yang Yi was stunned for a moment. He laughed and rubbed his daughter's little head, saying, "It's not that your mother slept in. She was too tired yesterday. Well, she was too tired from work. So she slept a little longer. You have to be considerate of your mother." Shishi tilted her little head and thought for a while with her still confused mind. Then she nodded and said, "Okay, but I didn't sleep in. Shishi is great." Yang Yi smiled and picked up the little girl to wash her face and brush her teeth. Then he came back and continued to make breakfast for Shishi and Murphy. Today's breakfast was very rich. There was crispy fresh milk, walnut peanut paste, and a plate of fried banana pie, so it took a little effort. Shishi smelled the tempting fragrance and couldn't help but drool. "Papa, I want to eat." The little girl felt hungry. "Right away. It'll be ready soon." Yang Yi was beating the walnut peanut paste. He smiled and comforted the little girl. "How about I sing you a song first? After the song, you can eat." Today's mood was really high. Yang Yi wanted to sing again. Chapter 393. Okay. Shishi clapped her little hands happily. The fun temporarily suppressed the delicious food in terms of status. Yang Yi set up the automatic program for the soybean milk machine to boil. Then he began to snap his fingers, twisting his shoulders and shaking his head according to the rhythm. This action was quite interesting. Shishi, who was standing at the kitchen door, couldn't help but giggle. "The sun blinks at me, the birds sing to me." Yang Yi sang with such emphasis for the first time. It was as if he was deliberately imitating the tone used to coax a child. Meet Mom sang. She watched him follow the lyrics. One moment, his right hand was blinking in front of his eyes, and the next moment he was listening. He sang and acted at the same time. The 8-foot-tall man was like a child, doing childish actions. It gave people an indescribable feeling of incongruity. But so what? Today, Yang Yi was an old man chatting with a crazy teenager. He was in a good mood and also played with his daughter. "I'm a hard-working and not clingy little fairy." Yang Yi's tone completely imitated Father Jia's singing style in his previous life. In the end, he even put his hands on his waist and played the role of a little fairy in a seductive manner. Ha 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 ha. Shishi was amused by her father and couldn't stop laughing. She felt that it was very funny. Shishi understood what a fairy meant. Wasn't it the little fairies who were beaten the most miserably in Journey to the West, and often had to take the blame for the big fairies? Don't ask me where I'm from, and don't ask me where I'm going. I want to pick the most beautiful flowers. In the kitchen, there was a bottle of daffodils that Murphy had arranged when she came back a few days ago. Daffodils bloomed in early spring. When she bought them, there were a few buds. Now all of them were in full bloom. The jade-white corolla and tender yellow calyx looked extremely beautiful. However, today, they were tragically killed. Yang Yi sang as he plucked one of the flowers. Then he pinched it with a smile and handed it to his daughter in a flattering manner. He continued to sing, "For my little princess." She happily accepted it. She really liked her father's nickname of Little Princess. Oh, I almost forgot. Yang Yi suddenly jumped on the ground and patted his head. What did he play? She was a little confused. But soon Dad continued to sing. The king asked me to patrol the mountains, so I'll take a look around the human world. The melody of this line was very pleasant, and it was catchy like "Let It Go." Shishi's eyes lit up immediately. Beat my drums, beat my gongs, life is full of rhythm. The kitchen was no longer big enough to showcase Yang Yi's acting talent. He snapped his fingers as he approached Shishi. The girl giggled and retreated step by step into the dining room. The king asked me to patrol the mountains, catch a monk for dinner. Yang Yi really did patrol around the dining table. However, Shishi understood this time. She was sure that her father was the little monster in Journey to the West. She giggled and said, "No way. Tang Sung can't be eaten. He can't eat people." "Then let's sing like this." Yang Yi excitedly changed the lyrics on the spot. The king asked me to patrol the mountains, catch a girl for breakfast. Yang Yi pointed at Shishi and winked at her. "I can't either. I don't taste good." The girl waved her hand, but she also smiled. She still knew that her father was teasing her. The water in this mountain stream. When Shishi came out, she didn't close the door behind her. The movements in the kitchen and dining room still woke Murphy up. She turned over and looked at her body that still had some hickeys. She couldn't help but blush. She secretly scolded Yang Yi. Fortunately, after she put on her pajamas, those hickeys were covered. There was still a hickey mark on her white neck. However, she didn't need to go anywhere today. She didn't need to worry about being discovered. When she was combing her disheveled hair, Yang Yi's singing entered her ears. Although she didn't know what song Yang Yi was singing, Murphy guessed that this guy had composed another song. It sounded quite interesting. When she came out of the bedroom, she saw Yang Yi singing and dancing like a child. She stopped in surprise. Was this still the usual steady Yang Yi? Of course, now that Yang Yi was playing with his daughter, it was more interesting. Murphy suddenly felt that he had a lot more life in him. "The king called me. Yang Yi made a posture of carrying a weapon and sang while twisting and turning. Suddenly, he felt that someone was looking at him from behind. He subconsciously looked back, and his voice was suddenly stuck. Murphy was covering her mouth and laughing secretly. She was leaning on the door frame and looking at him. Yang Yi was embarrassed. It was fine to play with Shishi for a while, but it didn't mean that he was shameless. Now that Murphy saw it, Yang Yi was so embarrassed that he couldn't continue his performance. "Continue singing. I think it's quite nice." Murphy giggled. Her beautiful eyes were filled with joy. "Cough cough, how do I sing this?" Yang Yi began to play dumb. However, Shishi believed him. The little girl was very enthusiastic. She raised her little hand and stood up for her father. "Mom, I can sing it. I'll sing it for you." Under Yang Yi's astonished gaze, Shishi really began to sing. "The king called me to patrol the mountains. I'll go around the human world." The little girl's voice was very childish, but this kind of innocent singing was also full of childlike interest. It was very nice to listen to, even better than Yang Yi's singing. I don't remember the rest. Shishi still only knew the first line. Then, she stuck out her little tongue and said with an embarrassed face. Yang Yi and Murphy couldn't help but laugh. Murphy picked up her daughter and affectionately rubbed her little head. "You've already sung very well. Next time let Daddy teach you the whole song." Yes, I want to sing. I want to sing it for Chi-Chi and Xi and Air." Shishi waved her little hand and said happily. At this time, Murphy saw the daffodil in Shishi's hand. She suspiciously pulled her daughter's hand and looked at the broken flower bud. "Hey, this daffodil looks very familiar." Yang Yi suddenly quivered. He just remembered that he was too happy and picked the flower that Murphy arranged. "Cough cough, this walnut peanut paste is already cooked. I'll go get it. Our breakfast today is good, haha. Yang Yi laughed and quickly slipped into the kitchen. She didn't hesitate to betray her father. She giggled and explained to her mother, Daddy gave this to me. Because I'm a little princess. What are you? Murphy didn't react for a moment. A little princess. The little girl said it very smoothly, as if this word should be pronounced in this way. She also said seriously, Daddy said it. Generally, Murphy would let Mo Shawan take care of her own micro-broadcasting. Except for sometimes organizing some interactive activities between stars and fans on the micro-broadcasting, Murphy rarely logged on her micro-broadcasting and rarely shared her life with others. However, Yang Yi's proposal yesterday made her overflowing with happiness. Until today she still felt happy. Even Murphy couldn't avoid this at this moment. She also had an impulse to announce her good news to the whole world. If it weren't for the original plan to wait until the contract was signed and then announce it to the public, Murphy couldn't help but want to show her happiness at this moment. Although she couldn't say it out loud, Mo Fei still wanted to express her feelings at the moment. On Yang Yi's computer, after logging into her account, she pondered for a long time and finally sent a very obscure micro-broadcast. I'm sorry. I'm very happy. I've been smiling all the time. Not long after the micro-broadcasting was sent out, the fans under the post refreshed with many comments. Wow. Is it true? Murphy actually sent such a micro-broadcasting? The style is completely different. Could it be that her account was hacked? My Murphy is an iceberg beauty. She won't ripple like this. I guess the manager got it mixed up and sent his own Weibo to here. Hey, the person who sent the micro-broadcasting should be more careful. It was really obscure. The fans all thought it was a mistake or a joke. They all started to ridicule her. Chapter 394. In this world, due to the perfect copyright protection, the entertainment industry was unprecedentedly prosperous. In order to satisfy the public's desire to peep at the celebrities' privacy, the development of the paparazzi could not be underestimated. However, among the regular paparazzi army, there was a group of people who wandered on the edge of the law. They did not follow celebrities for the purpose of sensationalizing news, but for profit. The photos they took would first contact the victims. If the victims were not willing to spend money to redeem them, then they would sell them to the tabloids and take the opportunity to earn a lot of money. Sometimes the paparazzi disdained to be associated with them, so they gave themselves a new name, Paparazzi Hunter. Liu Yu was a paparazzi hunter. Like other paparazzi hunters, he also fought alone. One person was an army. He wandered around the country alone, only to catch the most valuable news and then convert it into cash. 10 years ago, Liu Yu did not know what a paparazzi hunter was. He was just a conscientious salesman who needed to knock on door to sell his company's products, kitchen knives. Until one day, when he finished visiting a building and was preparing to leave tiredly, a paparazzi hunter found him and handed him a camera. He wanted his help, under the guise of selling, to secretly take a photo of a celebrity in the building. Liu Yu still had a flexible mind. He completed the task well. Not only did he get paid, but he also learned about the industry and paparazzi hunter's game from the triumphant boasting of the paparazzi hunter afterward. Liu Yu was moved. He quit his job and changed all his savings into a high-pixel camera. Without any qualifications, he directly threw himself into the industry. In the beginning of the year, Liu Yu had almost nothing. However, after getting through this difficult period, Liu Yu, who was familiar with the entertainment industry, quickly earned his first bucket of gold with his flexible mind. Then it was unstoppable. Now, although Liu Yu was still fighting alone, he had already changed his guns. Not only was he equipped with various high-end equipment, but he also bought a car, rented an apartment, and even put his name on a major brokerage company. Who didn't know that Liu Yu, the paparazzi hunter, had a good reputation? He did not sell to two people. It could be said that the brokerage company hated and loved him. Recently, Liu Yu had come to Jiang City. He had his eyes on Murphy, who had risen to fame this year. Like the other paparazzi, LVU also encountered the difficulty that Mo Shawan would use the ring highway to get rid of them. However, LVU did not stay in front of Tianmei Company. He had his own way. With the help of the housing authority, LVU found out that Murphy had purchased a house in Binhai district and began to wait there. Not only did he sneak into Murphy's neighborhood, but he also drove the van in. He usually drove the machine and stayed in the van, waiting for Murphy to appear. But what made him feel strange was that Murphy hadn't appeared for a long time, even though he had seen the news that Murphy had returned to Rivertown. Could it be that she had another residence? For a few days during the spring festival, LVU was also waiting for Murphy, but he still didn't see her. During the long wait, LVU had some doubts about whether the information he had received was wrong. Because Murphy's car was on the Ring Highway, it was possible that she didn't live here. But his friends in the housing authority had helped him check. Murphy did indeed only have one property. Perseverance was the most precious spirit of the paparazzi. LVU was the same. His 10 years of experience told him that perseverance was victory. He decided to wait for a few more days. He would wait until the end of the month. He had a hunch that Murphy would definitely appear here. Sure enough, this day finally came. On Monday, when LVU was slurping noodles in the car, a large pickup truck drove over. At first, LVU didn't pay attention. He just glanced habitually. As a result, he saw the figure that he had been dreaming of coming down from the passenger seat. Murphy? Murphy! LVU hurriedly put down the bucket. He didn't bother to wipe his mouth and picked up the binoculars to look. It was indeed Murphy. What surprised LVU was that Murphy also carried a little girl from the back seat. LVU could clearly see through the binoculars that Murphy and the little girl were both smiling. This was not in line with her usual cold image. Who was that little girl? A big question mark appeared on LVU's head. No matter who it was, no matter what their relationship was. After regaining his senses, LVU quickly picked up the camera and took a few photos. Murphy took the little girl's hand, and the two of them went upstairs. However, the experienced LVU didn't act rashly. He stayed in the car. If he remembered correctly, Murphy had just come down from the passenger seat. Then there was another person in the driver's seat. Was it her assistant and manager, Mo Shawan? If the driver hadn't gotten off, then they should continue to set off. With the discovery of the little girl, LVU felt that his 1 month of waiting was worth it. The rest was to continue to track down and get to the bottom of it. He wanted to know the real relationship between Murphy and the little girl. Although the big pickup truck was very conspicuous, and LVU could recognize it no matter where it was, he still copied down the license plate number of the car for insurance purposes. The reason why Mo Fei returned to her house was actually to get her household register. She did grow up in America. However, her nationality was still Chinese because her father used to have a green card in America. Later, he bought a farm and became an American farm owner. Then he officially went through the immigration procedures. However, the old man still had a strong sense of patriotism. He registered Murphy's nationality as Chinese and her birthplace was their hometown, Taiwan. Later, because of work needs and Murphy bought a house in Jiangcheng, she moved her household register to Jiangcheng. Shishi's nationality was also Chinese. Even though Shishi was born in America, Murphy gave up her American citizenship. The little girl's household register was also under her mother's name. However, at that time, Murphy was no longer famous, so no one dug up this big news. Now that the role of the ID card had been greatly upgraded, the household register was almost useless. Therefore, Murphy didn't give anyone a chance to find out about her relationship with Shishi. Today, she was going to get the marriage certificate with Yang Yi. So, she went back to the old house to get her household register. After a while, Murphy came down from upstairs. She went straight to the back seat. While fastening the child safety seatbelt for Shishi, she nodded to Yang Yi and smiled shyly. I got it. However, I haven't lived here for too long. The smell in the house is so strong. Murphy was actually in a good mood. However, when she thought about how she was going to officially marry Yang Yi today, she couldn't help but feel a little shy. Isn't this what you're looking forward to? Mo Fei was as happy as a young girl, but at the same time, she was secretly ashamed of her own smile. She wondered if she was being too obvious. Yang Yi's mood was a little complicated. Although he looked calm, he was actually a little nervous and expectant. He was going to get the certificate soon. What kind of experience would it be? Because of these emotions, Yang Yi seemed a little careless today. It wasn't until he drove on the road and passed a few traffic lights that he slowly realized that something was wrong. Murphy, there seems to be a car behind us that has been following us. Yang Yi frowned. He glanced at a van in the rearview mirror and said, Chapter 395. What car? Murphy looked back in confusion. Cece was also very curious. She twisted her little neck, but the high child safety seat blocked her view and she couldn't move. The little girl shouted unwillingly, I want to see it too, I want to see it too. Sit tight, or the traffic police uncle will come and arrest your papa. Murphy scared her. There's a silver gray van behind us. Yang Yi drove while looking at the rearview mirror. There was a car following behind them, separated by a few ordinary cars. When something happened, Yang Yi threw away all other distracting thoughts. His mind was very clear, and he could sense a faint strangeness. It wasn't a premonition that his life was in danger, but Yang Yi felt that he was being followed. Could it be the paparazzi? But I didn't go back to the company today. Murphy asked doubtfully. It was useless to think too much. Yang Yi couldn't get out of the car to find trouble with the stalker. He smiled and said, It's okay, I'll get rid of it. Sit tight. Yang Yi put the car in gear and stepped on the accelerator. The powerful horsepower of the tyrant wolf was reflected. It quickly sped up, and under Yang Yi's control, it nimbly shuttled through the traffic. After turning a few streets, it finally got rid of the silver gray van behind them. This frightening urban racing made Murphy a little nervous, but she was very excited. She looked at the car passing through the window and felt that it was fun. She danced and giggled. Yang Yi slowed down the car, but she still didn't want to. Seeing the car behind them drive by, she anxiously shouted, Papa, hurry up, we're going to be caught. We're already here. Why are you still driving so fast? Yang Yi said with a smile. They arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau of the Binhai district. Perhaps it was because it hadn't been long since the new year, but there weren't many people at the Civil Affairs Bureau today. Moreover, the newlyweds were all here for the wedding. Everyone was equally excited, thinking that they were the main characters of the day. Even when they saw Murphy wearing a mask and a sewing cap, they didn't think much of it. Yang Yi took the number and queued for a while before it was their turn. When their numbers were called, Murphy was a little nervous. Yang Yi looked at her. She was still a little at a loss. There was a smile in her eyes, but she stood there, unable to move her legs. Yang Yi smiled and reached out to grab Murphy's sweaty little hand and intertwined his fingers with hers. At this moment, Murphy calmed down. She moved closer to Yang Yi and looked at him sweetly. She whispered, Let's go. Yang Yi held Murphy's hand with his right hand and she, who was looking around curiously, with his left hand. They walked into the marriage registration office. At this moment, it attracted the attention of the others in the waiting room. However, they only looked at she and were a little surprised. When they saw this little girl before, they thought that her parents were here to get a divorce. They didn't expect that they were here to get married. Could it be that they were divorcing and remarrying? Of course, these two adults looked very young. The possibility of them getting pregnant before marriage wasn't small. Regardless of the speculations of the onlookers, Yang Yi, Murphy, and she were already facing the marriage registration official. When the kind-looking middle-aged woman saw Murphy dressed as if she were in the terminal stage of a serious illness, she laughed and said, Take off the hat and mask. You're not going to do anything. Why are you still wearing them when you're getting married? It was Murphy who had forgotten. She hurriedly nodded and let go of Yang Yi's hand. She took off the hat and mask and put them in her bag. Let me take a look at the household register first, the female official said to Yang Yi with a smile. She, it's your turn. Yang Yi patted his daughter's shoulder and smiled. She had been very eager to help her parents. Yang Yi gave her his and Murphy's household register. The little girl came to her senses and hurriedly took out her household registration booklet from her small bag. She ran forward and placed it on the table. She even tiptoed and reached out her hand to push the booklet in front of the woman. She said crisply, Auntie, here you go. Hey, what a cute little girl. Thank you. Only then did the female official notice Shishi. She took the household register and looked at Yang Yi in surprise. Wait, this is? Our daughter. Yang Yi hurriedly explained and did not forget to add, our biological daughter. The female official was stunned for a moment. She looked at Yang Yi and Murphy again. She could not imagine that these two young people would actually bring such a big child to their wedding. She also subconsciously thought that this couple had divorced because of a quarrel and then remarried. This relationship was a little complicated, so she was only thinking about Shishi and did not recognize Murphy. In order to confirm her guess, the female official opened Yang Yi's household register and saw that under Yang Yi's name, in the column of marital status, the word unmarried was written. What about the girl? The girl's name was Murphy, and she was also unmarried. Wait a minute, Murphy? Only then did the female official realize that the girl seemed very familiar. She moved her gaze from the photo in the household register to Murphy's face. It's really Murphy, the female official exclaimed in surprise. Hello. Murphy nodded at her, a little embarrassed. Hey, my family likes your songs, they like you a lot. You're here too. The female official was a little excited when she saw the celebrity. She patted her head and smiled. I forgot, you're here to get married. That's right. What else can you be here for? The female official was indeed someone who often registered marriages for other people. She was cheerful and loved to smile. She spoke with a sense of familiarity, and it was easy for her to close the distance between strangers. After hearing her words, Murphy's nervousness and awkwardness disappeared a lot. She smiled at the other party and said, Thank you. I'm here with my husband today to register my marriage. After knowing Mo Fei's identity, the female official was not surprised that they were married with such a big child. In their system, they had heard more detailed news than the gossip media. There were a lot of celebrities who got married in secret, or even didn't get a marriage certificate. How many of them were actually married in reality? Hey, this is a happy occasion. Congratulations, come, fill out this form first, and then go to the room next door to take a photo. You all know the procedure, right? The female official said enthusiastically. By the way, Murphy, can you give me an autograph later? My child likes you very much. No problem. Murphy and Yang Yi filled out the form. She looked up and said with a smile, but please keep it a secret, because we don't plan to make the news public immediately. That's a must. We are the most strict about confidentiality, the female official said with a smile. She then looked at Shishi and praised. Aya, your daughter is really beautiful. A talented man and a beautiful woman. Your genes are really good. What talented man and beautiful woman? It was just a compliment. She also did not know what Yang Yi did. Yang Yi smiled. He patted Shishi's little butt and reminded, Shishi, Auntie is praising you. Shishi giggled and hid in her father's arms. Then, she stuck out her little head and shyly looked at the kind-looking auntie. She said sweetly, Thank you, Auntie. Very obedient child. The female official took out a few pieces of candy from the drawer and stuffed them into Shishi's hands. Here they did not lack candy because many newlyweds would bring wedding candies. After the registration, they would give out candies to the officials. Chapter 396. Lu Yu looked at the big pickup truck turning in the traffic and gradually disappearing from his sight. He could only be stopped at the traffic light. He couldn't help but pat the steering wheel angrily. A month of waiting, and now he let them slip away. How could he be reconciled? Although he took a photo of Murphy and the little girl, which was a small gain, what could this photo prove? Others could also deny that they were relatives' children. As a veteran paparazzi hunter, he knew that such photos couldn't sell for a good price. He had to get some solid evidence. Lu Yu was not discouraged. He held back his energy and drove in the direction where the big pickup truck disappeared. He searched street by street. At this time, Yang Yi and Murphy were taking photos at the wedding ceremony. In order to take wedding photos, Yang Yi and Murphy were prepared, but it was nothing special. They didn't like to be too conspicuous. They both wore white shirts. After taking off their coats, they stood on the red background cloth. The contrast between the white shirt and the red background made them look particularly energetic. "Please wait a minute, master." Yang-yi gestured. He turned around and helped Murphy with her hair. Others were in high spirits when they were happy, but Murphy was in a daze today. She wore a hat before. After taking it off, her hair looked a little messy, but she didn't remember to tidy it up at all. "Do I need to touch up my makeup? I'm wearing light makeup today." Murphy was held by Yang-yi. She felt sweet in her heart, but she still asked with some worry. "No, it's good now. Very beautiful," Yang-yi said softly. The master in charge of taking photos was used to it. He directed Yang-yi and Murphy to stand in a good position. As soon as the two smiled, he made a gesture and said, "Okay." "So fast?" Mo-Fei still hadn't finished thinking and asked in surprise. "Don't worry, I've taken photos for so many people. The effect is not a problem." The master in charge of taking photos waved his hand impatiently. He was past the age of chasing stars, but he didn't recognize Murphy. "Master Fong, I'll have to trouble you to take a few more photos and pick the best ones." Fortunately, Yang-yi had a tall, fat person to guide him, so he knew some unspoken rules. He smiled apologetically and stuffed a pack of cigarettes and a few folded bills into Mr. Fong's pocket for the photographer. Actually, the picture just now is not bad." Master Fong glanced at his pocket and forced a smile on his face. "But if you want to take a few more photos, then take a few more. After all, you'll have to pay for the photos to be printed." What he said was not wrong. Although the attitude before and after he stuffed the money was different, the photos he took were not too flawed. Weren't all ID photos like this? It was still passable, but compared to the meticulous arrangement and post-processing, it was still a little different. Since the other party was so generous, Master Fong was also happy to accompany them. After taking a few wedding photos, Shishi also appeared in the camera. Master Fong moved a stool for her so that the little girl, who was not tall enough, could also appear in the middle of her parents' camera. In the end, they had to choose a photo. Of course, the one to be pasted on the marriage certificate could only be a photo of Yang-yi and Murphy. However, Yang-yi, Murphy, and Shishi all liked another photo. In the photo, with a red background, Yang-yi and Murphy had just looked at each other knowingly, and then they were facing the camera with smiles on their faces. Shishi's smile was even more brilliant, and her big eyes were smiling like crescent moons. It was rare to take a photo of Yang-yi and Murphy smiling so naturally. Moreover, the family of three was in the same frame. No wonder Yang-yi and Murphy liked it very much. "Master Fong, please print a few more copies of this." After Yang-yi finished speaking, he explained to Murphy, "I want to put this in my wallet." "Me too. Put it in my wallet. I'll take it with me wherever I go." Murphy and Yang-yi smiled happily. Shishi held the printed photo and refused to let go. She imitated her father, pouted her small mouth and said, "Then I want it too. I want to put it in my bag." "Then you put it in the inner layer. Don't lose it." Murphy helped her open the small bag and taught her to keep it well. The most sacred moment was when they received the marriage certificate from the female official. There were two small red booklets. When they opened it, there was a picture of the two of them in the same frame. Looking at Murphy, who had tears in her eyes, Yang-yi pulled her into his arms and whispered in her ear, "Wife." Actually, she was still a little unaccustomed to this address, but Murphy was full of joy when she heard it. She raised her head and shyly whispered back, "Hubby." As expected, she was not used to it. It was not as free and easy as when she called him by his name. However, this was a process of adaptation. The female official looked at them with a smile. She was definitely going to say some congratulatory words. "Finally, congratulations on becoming a legal husband and wife. Murphy, I wish you a happy and blissful life together." Usually she would say things like having a baby soon. However, there was already such a big daughter next to her, so she did not say much. After all, she was a celebrity. Murphy did not lose her composure. She sorted out her excited emotions and, together with Yang-yi, gave out wedding candies to the officials in the Civil Affairs Bureau. Originally, Murphy wanted to ask the female official to help her give out the candies. However, when someone came to visit, the news spread within the Civil Affairs Bureau. Some of the officials who were fans of Murphy came to ask for her autograph. There were also a few who liked to watch the fun. Murphy and Yang Yi had no choice but to generously give them wedding candies. Of course, there were also officials who liked Murphy's fans. They asked to take a photo with Murphy. Even Yang Yi was not spared. At this joyous moment, how could Murphy refuse? She agreed to all of them one by one. After a while, in order not to delay other people's wedding work, the location of the group photo was moved to a meeting room in the Civil Affairs Bureau. No matter what, Murphy was still very happy that they were able to witness her and Yang Yi's happy moment. She just reminded them not to spread the news. At this moment, LVU, who had been driving and searching for Murphy's traces, finally found something. Yang Yi had been living a comfortable life for too long. He was a little careless. After he got rid of LVU, he did not drive far and arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Therefore, LVU searched a few streets and spent more than an hour. Finally, he saw the familiar big pickup truck on the side of the road. Who asked Yang Yi's car to be so conspicuous? There were probably not many tyrants in the entire Jiangcheng. Moreover, this car was tall and big. It was parked on the side of the road, and was a head higher than other cars. It was like a bus parked outside an ordinary van. LVU looked over and found it at a glance. Found it. LVU still could not believe his eyes because he did not think that he could find it. It was just that his stubbornness was causing trouble, and he was unwilling to give up. Is it really this car? LVU stopped his van dozens of meters away. Then he picked up his binoculars and looked at it again and again. However, the license plate was blocked by the car parked next to it. LVU could not confirm it. He gritted his teeth and set up the camera in the car. He turned on the recording and locked the car. Then he grabbed a cell phone and walked out. He pretended to be a passerby, and passed by the big pickup truck. Doing so was risky. He had been beaten up before. However, even if he was really beaten up, he was not afraid. The camera was recording. A celebrity beating someone up, or a celebrity ordering someone to beat someone up. This was big news. Even if it was not exposed, any celebrity would have to pay to keep the peace. If he was beaten up, he could still earn back the medical fees with interest. Chapter 397. LVU wasn't beaten up. When he approached the car in fear, there was no one in the car. At the same time, LVU was slightly disappointed. However, there was still something to be happy about. LVU checked the license plate number, and it was exactly the same as what he had recorded before. It was indeed the car that Murphy was in, but what was she doing here? LVU looked around. At this time, he realized that the place where the car was parked on this street was right in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau. The other buildings were ordinary residential buildings. At most, there were some photo shops, printing shops, and some shops that rented clothes and sold clothes. It wasn't conspicuous. Civil Affairs Bureau? LVU's heart skipped a beat. 10 years of paparazzi experience told him that he was about to catch a big news. However, the closer it was to this moment, the calmer he had to be. LVU returned to his van in case he was exposed. However, he quickly frowned as he stared at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau and the big pickup truck. That's not right, LVU said to himself. Previously, this car shook me off. It should have found out that I was following it. That meant that his van had been exposed. At this moment, LVU was so excited and nervous as if he was watching a spy drama. His head was spinning wildly. He drove the car into an alley and hid it. Then alone, he took a high-definition camera and ran upstairs to a tea house opposite the Civil Affairs Bureau. Give me a pot of Phoenix Dankong, don't disturb me if there's nothing important. LVU picked a seat by the window and ordered a pot of tea. Then he picked up the camera and stared at the Civil Affairs Bureau and the car. After waiting for a while, LVU's eyes lit up. He saw a tall man and Murphy walking out of the building of the Civil Affairs Bureau with their fingers interlocked. Of course, Murphy was still in disguise. However, LVU recognized the clothes on Murphy's body, and the little girl in the tall man's arms. LVU held the camera and quickly zoomed in. He took a clear shot, especially the man's face. Who is that man? LVU had some doubts in his heart. He looked at the camera and couldn't find anyone with a similar face in his memory. Could it be that he's not from the entertainment industry? Lvu thought to himself. But suddenly, he saw the man in the camera frown and turn his head to look over. Lvu didn't know why, but when he saw this scene, he subconsciously shrank his head and hid the camera. He felt a sense of suffocation in his heart. Almost at the same time, Yang Yi, who was walking with Murphy to his car, also looked at the tea house. His sharp gaze fell in the direction of Lvu. However, she could only see a bunch of flowers and plants planted on the balcony. Yang Yi frowned. He felt that something was amiss. If he was not mistaken, there should be someone spying on him from that direction. Did he make a mistake? No, how could there be a mistake? Yang Yi had always believed in his intuition. In his previous life, this intuition had saved his life several times. Glancing at the sign of the tea house downstairs, Yang Yi pondered for a moment, and was ready to walk to the tea house. He wanted to find out what was going on. But Murphy, who didn't know what was going on, stopped him. Murphy just felt that Yang Yi's stop was somewhat inexplicable. Now that she saw that he was going in the wrong direction, she pulled him and said with a smile, "Here, the car is here." She also smiled and said, "I'm smarter than Papa. I recognized the car." The little girl thought it was funny. She laughed and leaned forward and back, lying on her father's shoulder. Murphy's words and his daughter's laughter made Yang Yi recover from the dangerous state of being spied on. Now Yang Yi felt as if a lifetime had passed. Just now, he had indeed entered a tense state of fighting. But looking at Murphy's happy smiling eyes and Shishi's innocent little face, Yang Yi realized that he was not in a chaotic and dangerous environment like in his previous life. That's right. In this world with my identity, no one should be spying on me, right? Yang Yi said in his heart. He didn't feel that he was being spied on. Maybe it's just an illusion. What's wrong? Murphy saw that something was wrong with Yang Yi and asked with concern. Nothing. Yang Yi smiled and said to Murphy, "I was thinking, today is such a good day, should we go somewhere to celebrate? Let's go eat Western food, okay? I know a top-notch Western restaurant that hired a French chef." Murphy was interested, but suddenly she said with some embarrassment, "Of course it might not be better than your cooking." "Then let's go there. I'll drive, you lead the way." Yang Yi smiled and waved his hand. He deliberately pretended to be a prodigal and said, "Today let's go there. We're not going to order whatever is delicious, but whatever is expensive. You're in charge of being wasteful, I'm in charge of being romantic." Murphy couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. But, whether Murphy covered her mouth or not, she was still wearing a mask. "Dad, where are we going?" She felt that it was very funny. She quickly pulled her father's clothes and asked. "We're going to a restaurant called Three Waves and have a big meal," Yang Yi said casually. "You're talking nonsense. There's no three waves. There are only two, romantic, wasteful." Murphy chuckled and explained to her daughter. "Actually, it's the restaurant that Mom brought you to before. It's a place to eat big ice cream." Shishi's eyes lit up like a 10,000-volt light bulb. She clapped her little hands excitedly and shouted happily, Okay. Lvu didn't know that he had walked through the gates of hell. He saw Yang Yi and Murphy get in the car through the gaps of the flowers. Then the car slowly drove away from the street. At this time, he changed his posture from lying on the table to standing up. He looked at Tyrannical Wolf's figure with some regret. However, it wasn't a pity. Lvu had already taken the shot that he wanted. Next, it was time to confirm his guess. Lvu went back to the car to tidy up. He changed into a security guard's outfit and walked towards the Civil Affairs Bureau building. "What are you doing?" A security guard uncle in the hall who was responsible for calling out numbers stopped him and asked suspiciously, "I'm a retired soldier. I'm here to ask about the subsidy policy for the retired soldiers this year. Didn't I hear that it was changed?" Lvu said in Mandarin with a dialect accent. Hearing his words, the security guard uncle's attitude towards him was much gentler. He even kindly gave him directions. "You go forward and turn right. There's an elevator to the 6th floor." "Oh, okay. Thank you, brother." Lvu took out a cigarette and gave it to the security guard. Although he couldn't smoke, the security guard still accepted it and stuffed it into his pocket. Then LVU smiled and said, "Brother, is it hard for you to be on duty here?" "It's hard. I have to stand all the time. 8 hours a day," the security guard uncle complained. After chatting with the security guard for a while, LVU pretended to ask casually, "There are so many people getting married at the Civil Affairs Bureau every day. Have you seen a celebrity? Don't we have a lot of celebrities in Binhai?" Who said no. Now is the most critical time to brag. The security guard uncle looked left and right. When he saw that no one was paying attention, he covered his mouth and lowered his voice and said to LVU, "Let me tell you. Just now, a big star called Murphy came to get married." LVU was ecstatic, but he didn't show it. He just pretended not to believe it and said, "No way? Is it true?" "It's true. I heard it from the people inside. It's a big star." The security guard uncle obviously didn't know much about the entertainment industry. "Is there a photo? Let me see if it's a real person?" LVU also deliberately whispered. "There are a lot of people pretending to be celebrities these days. Could it be a fake? Give me your pack of cigarettes. I'll ask Old Yin to take a photo for you. He has a wedding photo." The security guard uncle was not convinced. At the same time, he coveted the pack of cigarettes that LVU had just opened. LVU naturally gave it to him. After a while, the security guard uncle came out. He took out his mobile phone and mysteriously pointed to the photo on it, and said to LVU, "Look, it's a wedding photo of 2 people. It's a red background. Can you see if it's that big star?" LVU took the mobile phone. He had already recognized it, but he pretended to take a closer look and looked at it in front of his eyes. It just so happened that someone came to pick up the number. LVU took advantage of the security uncle's inattention and operated the mobile phone. "I'll check the photo of that big star on my mobile phone and compare it." As he spoke, he used his mobile phone to accept the photo via Bluetooth, and then deleted the sent record. "How is it? Is it?" the security uncle asked him after he finished his business. "Yes, it really is. Hey brother, your job is interesting. You can even see a big star get married." LVU was ecstatic. He almost shouted out, but he suppressed it and continued to flatter the security uncle. "Isn't that right?" The security uncle took the mobile phone and put it directly in his pocket. He laughed. "Brother, I have to ask about the policy. I won't talk about it for now." LVU played the whole show and took the initiative to say, "We talked so much today. Why don't you leave your phone number, and I'll treat you to a drink after work in the evening. I'll also listen to your story." The security uncle readily agreed and took out his mobile phone and left him his phone number. Drinking is a must. You're a good kid. You're loyal. Don't think that LVU was fooling the security guard uncle. He really wanted to invite the security guard uncle to drink some wine. First, he secretly thanked the security guard uncle for his help. The harvest of this trip was definitely beyond his imagination. Perhaps it might be the most he had made in 10 years. Secondly, he also has a bright idea. He plans to develop an informant in the Civil Affairs Bureau. Maybe he can get some news through the security uncle in the future. These are all money. Chapter 398. Their married life was no different from before. Maybe it was because Yang Yi and Murphy's cohabitation life was similar to that of a normal married couple. The next day, Murphy went back to work at the company, while Yang Yi sent Shishi to kindergarten. He then went back to work on Prison Break and The Remaining Sin. The 2 books were still popular on the internet, but Yang Yi had a plan, which was to speed up the release of the remaining drafts, so that the 2 books could be completed as soon as possible. Then he could put more energy into the Sahara Publishing House. Anyway, as long as he didn't publish his work on other websites, but through the publishing house, he wouldn't violate the contract with Chiyu. To be honest, Yang Yi had chosen Chiyu because of its simple structure and quick profits. However, he didn't like to update every day. This kind of work made him feel constrained. Plus, he didn't have many literary works in his mind that were suitable to be published on the internet. Now that he had his own publishing house, Yang Yi wanted to publish a book directly. However, Yang Yi didn't have time to rest that day. He had just sat down in the coffee shop when Du Yuanlei came looking for him. "Teacher Yang, I'm ready." Du Yuanlei, who was sitting in front of Yang Yi, wasn't as haggard as she had been a few days ago. She looked radiant, and even her lips were painted with light lipstick. She looked confident and energetic. Yang Yi looked at Du Yuanlei with admiration, then smiled and said, "Then I'll tell you the general plot of the movie. Listen to it and see if it's suitable." Ludi is a bank robber. His past crimes were all over the place, and he was the main target of police officer Du Jiang. Du Jiang felt that Ludi only knew how to rob banks and nothing else. He didn't believe that Ludi would wash his hands of crime, even though Ludi had been in prison for 5 years and had just been released. Du Yuanlei listened attentively and even made notes in her little notebook. But in reality, the long prison life had already made Ludi fearful. He had just been released from prison, so he cherished the air of freedom and wanted to live a normal life. But Du Jiang didn't believe him. He even came to pick Ludi up and warned him not to make any more mistakes. Let him be caught. Ludi couldn't be bothered with Du Jiang. He wasn't even willing to explain so much to him. He asked Du Jiang to send him to the bank because he wanted to deposit the money he earned from working in the prison into the bank. But ironically, he encountered a bank robbery in the bank. Yang Yi spoke frankly with assurance, but Du Yuanlei was attracted by his story. A bank robber who had just been released from prison encountered someone else robbing a bank, and then there was a police officer who wanted to arrest him again. No matter how one looked at it, this story would cause a lot of misunderstandings that would make people not know whether to laugh or cry. While Yang Yi was telling stories to others, she was also in kindergarten. She was excitedly telling her friends the story of how her parents had proposed to her over the weekend. "My papa played the violin and sang to my mama. Then I took out a box and gave it to my papa, and my mama agreed." Cece's description was very weak, but her friends listened very carefully. "Your father can sing?" Lan Xian was very envious. She pulled Shishi's little hand and asked, "Why was it always other people's fathers who were better? Her own father didn't seem to know anything." "Yeah, my papa can sing very well." Shishi nodded vigorously, her little face revealing a proud expression. "My father didn't propose to my mother. I don't even remember. They seem to have been living together." Nan Zhaoyu frowned. He couldn't understand. Of course he didn't remember. When his parents got married, he wasn't even born yet. Shishi said with concern. Then you have to tell your papa and mom. Boys and girls have to get married before they can live together." "Okay then." Nan Zhaoyu nodded with a sad face. He was a little depressed. He actually had a feeling that my parents weren't good children. "My father and my mother got married. My father has a big wedding photo on his bed." Young Luoqi's mind was clear this time. Perhaps her parents had told her a story before. Shishi was still thinking about her own things and didn't answer. My papa and mom even kissed. My papa said that boys and girls can't kiss before they get married." Shishi remembered what her father had told her before, and happily shared it with her friends. "But my cousin kissed me during the New Year." Chen Shiyin was very confused. "No, you can't." Shishi quickly waved her hand and said seriously, "Chen Shiyin, you have to tell him that you can't." "Nan Zhaoyu, you can't kiss my face either." Lan Xian suddenly snorted and said, "My father also said that boys can't kiss me. But when we play house, aren't we parents? Parents can kiss each other." Nan Zhaoyu said with a little grievance. Ahem. Teacher Mu, who had been watching with a smile, couldn't help but come over and pat Nan Zhaoyu's shoulder. She said softly, "In fact, Shishi and Xan are right. You can't kiss casually. Moreover, you have to remember in the future that if anyone wants to kiss you, whether it's an adult or a child, you have to say to him, 'No, you have to ask for my father's permission.'" "Hehe, my papa said the same thing." Shishi jumped and said happily. "Okay." Nan Zhaoyu was a little depressed. However, after all, they were children. The topic between them quickly changed. Chen Shiyin said that she and her father went to watch other people's boxing match on the weekend, which attracted the attention of the little guys. After a while, the class began. Today, Teacher Kai taught the children English class. From the beginning of this semester, the children will begin to learn English. However, they don't need to learn how to write English words, nor do they need to learn complicated phonetic symbols. Instead, they need to follow the teacher and learn some pronunciation and the names of common objects. Children, look at this. What is this? Teacher Kai took out a small card. Apple. The children cried in unison. There were also naughty children such as Chen Shiyun, who raised her arm and laughed mischievously. It's not an apple, it's a big watermelon. Fortunately, everyone was used to it, and Teacher Kai ignored her answer. Yes, apple. In English, it's called apple. Everyone follow the teacher and say a plea. Teacher Kai smiled, slowed down, and exaggerated the shape of her mouth. A break. Auntie. Then, all kinds of names began to be called. Shishi, who grew up in the United States, knew some English and could pronounce it correctly. However, the little girl looked at her friends and giggled happily. Her accent also began to be distorted. For example, she also imitated Lon Xian's Ipu. Ipu. The two little girls snuggled up to each other, laughing and swaying left and right. Chapter 399. Yang Yi had already finished introducing the plot of the movie. The whole story sounded a bit like a French style. The jokes were not unreasonable, rigid, or intense. They all came from a normal life. However, the simple contrast and misunderstanding brought about a lot of fun. While it made people laugh, it also had a strong sense of intimacy. As Du Yuanlei listened, she felt that if she were in the movie, she would do the same thing as the characters in the movie. She would have the same experience, and she would show the same jokes. However, what I like more is the humanism shown in this story. For example, the reckless young robber Wang Li, his real purpose of robbing was to provide for his autistic daughter, Mai, to go to school. He was a kind person, so he took Ludi to the old veterinarian who didn't differentiate between humans and beasts. Du Yuanlei shared her thoughts. Ludi is also a stubborn person. After being touched by Mai, he didn't selfishly leave. Instead, he chose to help Wang Li get out of his predicament. She looked down at her notes and hesitated for a moment before asking, "But Teacher Yang, isn't this ending a bit too cruel? They have tried their best to get out of this predicament, but in the end, when they were about to achieve freedom, they encountered another bank robbery. You think it's a bit cruel?" Yang Yi felt that Du Yuanlei's judgment was very interesting. Logically speaking, Du Yuanlei had previously written Guang to die in her own script. She should be able to understand the artistic effect reflected in this ending. After all, there is a very pitiful little girl here. I feel a little sorry for her. Du Yuanlei was a little sympathetic to the little girl in the story. She sighed and said, "It's better to let them escape the country and live a good life." Actually, the ending of this story is not a hopeless loop. Yang Yi smiled slightly and analyzed for Du Yuanlei. Because if you look carefully, you will understand that letting them be robbed again is not to let them fall into a desperate situation where they can't escape the shackles of fate. Think about it. After Wang Li was kidnapped by the robbers, what would he do? Yang Yi asked. Du Yuanlei's eyes lit up. She thought quickly and immediately said, "He won't associate with the robbers because he's not a real robber." In order to save Wang Li, Rudy might even cooperate with the police and help Wang Li redeem himself. Not only does he no longer have to be a fugitive, but he can also clear Rudy of suspicion. In the future, Wang Li might have to stay in prison for a few more years, but Rudy will take care of Wang Li. After he comes out of prison, the two adults and one child can live a normal life again. Yang Yi said with a smile. But we won't film it. Instead, we'll leave it to the audience so that they can think about it themselves. Du Yuanlei clenched her fists and asked in excitement. That's right. Yang Yi nodded. A good movie can't film the whole story. In other words, no matter how perfect the story is in your heart, you can't tell it perfectly. Regret is the key to the sublimation of the story. After discussing the plot, Du Yuanlei was very interested in Yang Yi's story. She picked up the script that Yang Yi handed to her and prepared to read it carefully. However, before she went back, Du Yuanlei curiously asked Yang Yi. Teacher Yang, are you going to let your daughter play the role of the little girl Mai Yi? Yang Yi froze for a moment. He waved his hand and said, No, you can choose the actors you want. I won't interfere. This movie was actually Yang Yi's favorite, just like Lion the Hitman. Of course his favorite was still Lion, the Hitman. Otherwise, as an orphan in his previous life, he wouldn't have used the name of the main character to give himself an English name since he didn't have a real name, and only had a code name. Do you think that I tailor-made this role for my daughter? Yang Yi looked at Du Yuanlei and said, Actually, that's not the case. The little girl in this movie is an important supporting role. Her appearance can make the characters of the two adults more mature, and make the movie full of warmth. Indeed, this story wasn't made up for Shishi. There was a character like Mai Yi in the movie, but I want to choose Shishi to play the role of Mai Yi. After thinking about it, I still think that Shishi is the most suitable for this role. Du Yuanlei said honestly. Shishi likes to act in movies. She's just like the little girl in the movie. She's very cute and likable. Yang Yi tried his best to defend himself. But the little girl in the movie has a different personality from Shishi. She's autistic and doesn't like to talk. But look at my daughter. She's a chatterbox. Yang Yi had indeed thought about whether Shishi was suitable for this role. However, he still didn't want his daughter to enter the entertainment industry so early. This little girl hadn't grown up yet. If she entered the entertainment industry too early, it would affect her physical and mental development. Du Yuanlei couldn't help but laugh when she heard him complain about her daughter. She said, Who said that you have to have the same personality to act in a movie? Acting, isn't it all about the word acting? She's only 4.5 years old. How would she know this? Yang Yi waved his hand. Du Yuanlei really felt that it was unfair for Shishi. She said, Don't look down on your daughter. Last time, she made a cameo appearance in our mini-movie Fairy Tale. She was acting as herself. Then what about the show she performed with you last Christmas? I remember it was called The Tortoise and the Hare, right? She acted as the hare so vividly. I think she has a talent for acting, Du Yuanlei said. Yang Yi frowned. He waved his hand and said, Go and read the script first. We'll talk about the actors later. He used the delaying tactic. He planned to wait for Du Yuanlei to calm down before rejecting her request. Anyway, there were so many child actors. Du Yuanlei couldn't pick them out. Du Yuanlei was a little helpless, but she still listened to Yang Yi's arrangement. Today, Murphy returned to the company in a happy mood. Mo Xiaowan saw her and said sourly, Sister, are you afraid that people don't know that you're married? Look at how happy you are. You've been grinning like a fool the whole day. Murphy reacted and stopped smiling. She patted Mo Xiaowan's hand and said, Of course not. Didn't you say that you won't tell the company first? Speaking of which, sister, you and brother-in-law registered your marriage, but you didn't announce it to the public. You didn't have a wedding or a honeymoon. Brother-in-law didn't complain at all? Mo Xiaowan asked curiously. Murphy was stunned for a moment. She gently shook her head and said, No, Yang Yi can still understand my current difficulties. Then brother-in-law is really a good man. Mo Xiaowan said with some emotion. Do you know Lu Fengfei? She used to be in the public relations department, but I poached her to work in the studio. She was quite unfortunate in the past. After she got married, she was very busy with work and didn't have much time to accompany her husband. Then, her husband couldn't understand and quarreled at home all day. Later, he even cheated on her. Do you know what Lu Fengfei's husband said after she found out? He said, Do you have the appearance of a woman? You don't care about home and work overtime every few days, leaving him alone at home. You're forcing him to find another woman. Mo Xiaowan said indignantly. Humph, this bitch. She's still reasonable when she cheated on him. If he really can't stand it, then he can divorce her and find another woman. Murphy listened to Mo Xiaowan's words and suddenly fell silent. She frowned and no one knew what she was thinking. But at this moment, someone knocked on Murphy's office door. Mo Xiaowan went to open the door. It was Niu Meiling's assistant. Sister Ling wants to talk to you about something. Chapter 400. Neo Miling wanted to talk to Murphy about something other than contract renewal. What else could it be? Right now, Mo Shawan watched as Neo Miling chatted with Murphy and asked about her work after the Spring Festival. She also asked about the progress of her concert preparations. But in her heart, she was betting with herself. When will we talk about the contract renewal? Murphy, on the other hand, was seriously discussing the concert arrangements with Neo Miling. She suggested, Sister Ling, should we add one or more concerts? For example, Jiangcheng. Last month, when we had a signing event there, the fans were still very enthusiastic. Also, Chuan Province's Tianfu. If we only have concerts in Beijing, Shanghai and Guangzhou, it would be unfair to the fans in the other cities. Neo Miling was a little embarrassed, but she was experienced and didn't let Murphy see through it. She laughed and said, It's fine. There will always be a chance to see concerts. After you finish these 3 concerts, we'll have 3 more in the next season. The fans in the other cities can also come to Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou to watch. They can also travel to the international metropolises. Don't think that Neo Miling didn't want to earn money. She wanted to earn money too much. Many cities' concert markets were controlled by professional concert planning companies. Other than a few powerful record companies and management companies that could bypass them, other smaller companies would have to work with them if they wanted to book a concert venue in these cities. In this way, the profit that Tian Mei could get would be greatly reduced. Not to mention that most of the income would be given to Mo Fei because of the contract. In addition, the attendance rate in these cities was relatively low, so the ticket sales and ticket prices were often not as good as those in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. Therefore, if Tian Mei held 3 concerts in these cities, they might not be able to make as much money as 1 concert in Shanghai. In this way, Neo Miling was naturally more willing to hold a few more concerts in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. Mo Fei's thoughts were much simpler. She frowned and said, But Sister Ling, going to another city to watch a concert is also a lot of extra expenses for them. Then you don't have to watch concerts for now. Which cities are you interested in? I can arrange a few more commercial performances for you. You can meet your fans and let them listen to you sing. Isn't the effect the same? Neo Miling laughed and said unhurriedly. Commercial performances were great. Those brands wouldn't only pay Murphy's expenses, they would also give the management company an extra red packet. Most importantly, Neo Miling could earn a favor in the middle. How can you compare commercial performances to concerts? Murphy still felt that it wasn't right. She was actually quite disgusted by these kinds of performances. However, at this time, Mo Shawan pulled Mo Fei and signaled her not to continue arguing with Neo Miling. At this time, Neo Miling finally had the chance to say her real purpose today. Mo Fei, last year, we talked about the contract renewal, but you told Shawan that we would talk about it after the album was released. Sister Ling also agreed to it. Now that your album has been released and has achieved good results, Sister Ling is also happy for you. It's just that your contract with Tian Mei is less than 4 months away. Shouldn't we also talk about the contract renewal? Murphy was startled. She actually didn't want to consider renewing the contract at all, but she wasn't ready to lay her cards on the table with Neo Miling. Now that Sister Ling suddenly mentioned it, how should he answer? Should he say it clearly? Murphy's heart was in a mess. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Fortunately, Mo Shawan was afraid that she would say it directly, so she rushed to say to Sister Ling, Sister Ling, now that Sister Fei has obtained such results, do you still want Sister Fei to sign an ordinary contract? Of course, Neo Miling wanted Murphy to sign an ordinary contract, but now that the situation was better than her, she wouldn't be so stupid as to make such an impossible request. She smiled, took out a contract from the table, and said, Of course not. I have always attached great importance to an excellent singer like Murphy. Although our Tian Mei is still facing a big problem, no matter how difficult it is, we can't let Murphy suffer. Top contract. We still want to sign a top contract with Murphy. Neo Miling handed the contract over and said with a smile. However, after all, so many years have passed and the market has changed a lot. Some of the terms of our top contract have also changed a little. Sure enough, Neo Miling still didn't give up. Even if she signed a top contract, She still wanted to deduct some and squeeze out more profit. Mo Xiaowan took the contract and flipped it open. She saw the changes in the ratio of various types of activities. She looked at Niu Meiling with some deep meaning. Sister Ling, if you said that it was just changing the penalty, then I wouldn't say anything. But as for the revenue sharing, it seems that the company's ratio has been raised a little. Mo Xiaowan said to Niu Meiling with a smile. Murphy frowned. She turned her head and whispered in Mo Xiaojuan's ear. Why are you still talking to Sister Ling about this? Didn't you not consider renewing the contract? Mo Xiaowan still had a smile on her face. She pretended to talk to Murphy about the contract, but in fact, she only said one word to Murphy. Drag. Niu Meiling waited for them to finish discussing before gently explaining. She had prepared a lot of excuses. For example, last year's Yi Qing, the A-list male singer who sang Fireworks in the Heart and competed with Murphy's Coming Across the Sea to See You, signed a contract with Starfire Media as a case study to explain the need for her to increase the company's profit sharing. She said a lot of things until she was in tears. It was as if Tian Mei almost couldn't continue. Murphy had already seen through her. Wasn't this still playing the emotional card? Murphy was silent, but Mo Xiaowan was able to deal with it easily. She smiled and said, Sister Ling, I understand your difficulties, but after all, renewing the contract is a big deal. There are a lot of treaties on it, so we have to talk about them properly. Now is not a good time, because in a few days, Sister Fei will be going to Beijing for her first concert. How about this, we take this contract back and look at it first. If there are any details that need to be considered, we can continue to talk about it later? Mo Xiaowan used honorifics and respectfully discussed with Niu Meiling. Niu Meiling still smiled gently. Of course, the contract renewal is not something that can be discussed in a short period of time. I understand. As long as Murphy Xiaowan, you don't have any big opinions, we can talk about it slowly. Don't we still have 4 months? Murphy and Mo Xiaowan left. Niu Meiling, who was still happy just now, finally stopped smiling. Her face was a little gloomy. She was clearly dissatisfied with Murphy and Mo Xiaojuan's attitude just now. Moreover, Niu Meiling also frowned. She secretly felt that something was wrong. She always felt that Murphy's emotions were a little wrong. It was different from her previous positive attitude. Today, she seemed a little unwilling. Could it be that she was disloyal? Niu Meiling began to suspect. Murphy and Mo Xiaowan, who had left her office, were also talking. Xiaowan, why are you talking about the contract with Sister Ling again today? Didn't we agree that we won't renew the contract with Sister Ling? Murphy asked in confusion. Mo Xiaowan said helplessly. That will have to wait until the final showdown. We can't fall out with Tian Mei now. There are still 4 months. I don't know what Sister Ling will do. Right now, we can only pretend to talk to her about the terms and drag it out for as long as possible. Murphy was silent. She felt that something was wrong. Moreover, Mo Xiaowan dragging it out made her feel a little uneasy. However, her mind was in a mess and she didn't know what to do. Sis, there's another question. You didn't have to argue with Sister Ling about the concert just now. Mo Xiaowan suddenly remembered. She curled her lips and said to Murphy, You also know that Sister Ling is a person who goes for the money. She won't be able to make much money holding a concert in Jiangcheng. Even if you say that the fans are pitiful, she won't be moved. Murphy heard this and her mood fell. She sighed and said, I know, but I feel that those fans don't have it easy. They even went so far to watch a concert. Anyway, in the future, when you and brother-in-law work in your studio, you can earn money and spend money as you like. You will be free. At that time, you can also hold a few more concerts for your fans in other cities as compensation. Mo Xiaowan comforted her. You're right. There are only 4 months left. Murphy smiled and nodded happily. You're tuning into the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.